What was the most unhinged crime that somebody in your family committed? Last year, my psychotic mother burned down my childhood home that her, my dad, my niece, my sibling, and sibling's partner lived in. She did this because she believed that my dad was cheating on her, despite no evidence, and this was not the first time she had accused him of cheating with no evidence. Effectively, she destroyed everything we had built and kept in that home, along with my dad's dog and my sister's cat. The cat was burned up, so we never found it, but the dog died of asphyxiation in my niece's room under her bed. Then, after the fire, in what I can only construe as an act of desperation, she went to my bank and stole all of the money out of my accounts because she was secondary on the accounts. I was working on changing banks, but my new bank had yet to finalize the creation of my new account. Moral of the story is, take your parents off your bank accounts as soon as you turn 18. She's now serving time in a county jail for the arson because she took a plea deal and got a reduced sentence, which I still believe was utter crap. She played the poor old lady act to the judge and he took pity on her, and she did not deserve that pity. This is the woman who eviscerated my self-esteem and made my life hell ever since I was born. She was a toxic bully who never told me the truth about anything and is a greedy, manipulative person. I feel no shame in saying that I do not care about her. She's lost any right to my love and respect. My father committed one of the first computer crimes in the 90s. A ton of files were corrupted due to a code he created because they fired him. The FBI invaded our home and arrested him. He was sent to federal prison for 4 years, which was interesting because there was never a crime committed of its nature before. They made a forensics file about it. If anyone is curious, the company was Omega. Oh my god, I learned of this and I've seen that episode. He actually created a script that deleted all the manufacturing files after he was fired. I think I remember them using some user and pass and was set to execute once someone logged into the system. He even did a trial run of it before planting the real ticking time bomb code. Plus, he had taken the backup disks and refused to provide them, or he had already damaged them. Somewhere around 3 million worth of damages, but more up to about 10 million if they'd counted sales and contracts. My cousin's husband got caught on a Predator Chasers live stream trying to kidnap someone. My uncle used to dress up with a group of friends as DEA agents in the 80s and raid smack houses, only to take the smack and consume it. I mean, how old were they? Are we talking like a bunch of kids in suits pretending to be DEA agents? And did they manage to fool these people that they were coming back to arrest them later and just hand the stuff over? There are some bits that are a bit funny, even though this is objectively bad. You'd hope that it would make the broke smack addicts have no choice but to sober up for a while at least. I just hope the withdrawal didn't kill anyone. Definitely a crazy one for this video. Twin brothers boosted a car and robbed the 7-Eleven like half a mile from our house. They ditched the car 10 houses from theirs. How were they caught? The officers responded to an alarm triggered by the clerk. The officer comes in and is like, "Got an alarm here, what happened?" The clerk said, Yeah, Tim and Tom came in and robbed the store. How do you know it was those guys? They're the 6'4" twins who come in every day. I know their shape and voice. This was confirmed by a call to 911. The operator goes, "What's your emergency?" And their neighbor from down the street says, Yeah, I was watching TV and 2 guys parked a car in front of my house. This one guy got out with like a Windex bottle and cleaned all the door handles and door areas. Then they opened the door and the other guy took the stuff and cleaned the inside areas. Then they ran off up the street. Can you describe the 2 individuals? Well, it was Tim and Tom, the twins that live up the street from me. They're like 6'4" and they're twins. My mother set a guy on fire. When I was young, I had a babysitter named Chris. He was the uncle of my 2 best friends, sisters Abby and Becca. He was also an awful, awful man. He liked to do things to me in front of them, make them listen to me cry and scream. Nothing physical, I should mention, more psychological. Anyway, I didn't tell anyone about it, and in fact I only learned this story about 2 years ago. But it turns out my best friends did tell people about it. They told my mother, and she was mad. Soon after that, there was a party at my friend's parents' house. My mum goes and sees Chris. He's all nice to her. They're outside in the backyard. She starts kind of joking around, roughhousing, messing with him. She grabs some lighter fluid and sprays some on him. Ha ha ha, just a joke. She lights a match. Ha, now you wouldn't like that, would you? And she lights him on fire. According to my mum, he was put out quickly, so he was fine. But she told him that's what it's like when you're scared for your life. And then she left. Apparently, he flew back to Florida the next day. My brother got completely inebriated one night and stupidly drove home. He woke up early in the morning to the sound of a crying baby. He looked around and noticed he didn't recognize the house. He quickly got up and walked outside to his car halfway in the driveway and street that was still running. He got into his car and drove away as quickly as he could. Turns out it was some random house about 5 to 10 minutes away from our actual house. He never knew whose house it was and he never got caught. He also slowed down his drinking after that. My father, when I was still very young, used a fake name and pretended to be a wedding planner for a young couple. That young couple hired him since he seemed trustworthy and he's an excellent liar, giving him access to their savings for wedding supplies and such that would be needed. Instead, he stole all of the money out of their account and then ran away with it. As far as I'm aware, he was never caught and the money was never returned to them. The worst part is that the poor couple never even got their wedding and had almost nothing left afterwards. In college, we got a new printer and printed off a bunch of fairly convincing $20 bills. We roughed them up and used them at a bunch of fast food restaurants. Didn't realize how dumb that was until years later. Back in the late 90s, 2 boys I lifeguarded with in the summer were arrested for making fake money as well. I was actually shocked because they were both good kids and seemed pretty straight. Apparently they'd had a whole sweet setup and the FBI investigated them a year before arresting them. Neither served any time since they were 16 and had no priors, and I assume their parents got great lawyers. One's an engineer now, no clue about the other. My wife's cousin was arrested for the manufacturing of crystal. 3 times, she was sentenced to life. He, his mum and dad all cooked crystal and supplied basically the entire area. The worst part is that during his last arrest, he was taking the fall for his parents. They were in a large part why our small, sleazy little trash heap of a town was one of the top 5 for crystal in the United States at the time. Ooh, so my great-aunt disappeared off the face of the earth after her daughter's wedding, and nobody had any clue what happened. Foul play wasn't suspected or anything, however her shotgun was missing. Well, like a month ago we found out that she'd died last year. She'd apparently skipped jury duty to go to the wedding, and instead of doing anything logical, she straight up ran away and lived in hiding in a backwoods town in Washington. No letters or anything, she just decided that the most effective way to get around jury duty to go to a wedding was to live in hiding for 30 years. My uncle stole one of those oil candles from our table at Hard Rock Cafe once. When we got outside, he pulled it from his jacket with it still lit. My sister shoplifts uncontrollably. She shoplifts everything, everywhere she goes. Her daughter just turned 1 and she's stolen every bit of formula that her daughter has ever used. It's insane that she's never been caught. Well, at least she's stealing things that she needs. But really, she should knock that off. That kid needs a parent and she can't be that when she's in jail for inevitably being found with a house full of every shelf item from Walmart. My cousin was taking care of a woman in a coma. He committed the unspeakable act against her. Little did he know that her parents had set up a webcam to check regularly if she woke up. He deserved every single day he spends in prison. My grandpa wouldn't obey the train warnings. He'd try and beat the train rather than wait. The first time he got hit in his new convertible on the way to prom with my grandma. Had barely started on the payments and his car was totaled. Luckily, they were both okay. The second time was a little bit less reckless, but still dumb. He was driving a semi and it broke down on the tracks. He kept trying to get the tractor trailer to start rather than lose his rig and load. The semi got hit by the train, total loss, and effed up his back. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My parents' horse got loose and somebody hit and killed it. The horse disposal people wanted some relatively reasonable amount of money to come pick up the carcass, but my parents were like, "Oh, screw that. Hey, Henderson," that's me, "you load that thing up on the flatbed and find somewhere to dump it." I said, "Okay, sure, Pops." I call my stupid friend. "Hey, you want to go dump a horse somewhere?" My stupid friend replies, "Sure, I have nachos." Cool. So, stupid friend and I take even more wacky tobacco than usual and took my parents' flatbed truck out and tried to winch the horse up onto it. Turns out you can't really winch a dead horse onto a flatbed. It's not the winching that's the problem so much as the 5-foot lift up to the edge. We messed up a lot of that horse trying, though. Attempt number 2, we went home and built a big ramp out of plywood and 4x4s. It took most of a day and half a dime bag of green herb. We argued a lot about whether or not we should bevel that part of the 4x4s that touched the ground. The final decision was that neither of us knew how to do that, so we opted for no bevel. Back at the horse, we wrapped the winch line around the head this time. Fun fact, steel cable looped around a horse head in a slipknot arrangement is a good way to reenact a famous scene from The Godfather. We didn't quite decapitate Mr. Gooseberry, long may he gallop in the heavenly fields, but it wasn't pretty. Nothing about a dead horse is pretty, but that part in particular was remarkably not pretty. We decided to go with our original idea, lash the front hooves together with the rope. Small problem, we'd cut the rope at some point. Neither of us could remember why or who did it, but nothing for it, we had to go home. Finding more rope required smoking another half bundle of Mary J, which I think is quite reasonable given the task we were set to. Back at the horse again, our engineering marvel worked. We had some initial worry that we'd pull one or both of the horse's forelegs out of its socket, but apparently dead horse sinew has quite a bit of tensile strength. We used tie-down straps to lash the horse and ramp to a flatbed, initiating a discussion about why we hadn't used those in the place of rope, leading to an argument over whether or not that would have worked, leading to an awkward, hostile silence as we drove around the rear end of South Dakota, looking for a place where we could dump a dead horse. I'm sure there were many places one could dump a dead horse in the middle of rural South Dakota. Strangely enough, though, we were both feeling a little paranoid. Every car that passed us was a plainclothes cop car to our minds. Every person standing out in their field was heading straight to their house to report us as soon as we went around the bend. Finally, we found a field in the Black Hills National Forest that looked like a good spot. It had trees, which we thought a horse would like, and there was a nice parking area next to a snowmobile trailhead. Goose had never liked snowmobiles, so the idea of his skeletal carcass scaring the crap out of some ski-doer coming off the trail seemed like something that would have appealed to the old fella. We backed the truck a little ways into the ferns next to the trail, then we used a come-along to pull the dead horse off the flatbed. About a mile into the way home, stupid friend said, "Does your horse have, tattoos?" I was like, "It's a horse, not a frickin' chief petty officer in the Merchant Marine. Why would it have frickin' tattoos?" Well, apparently some horses have tattoos, according to stupid friend. It's how they identify them, if they're stolen. Note that subsequent research revealed that this was usually only something done with thoroughbreds, which our horse was definitely not. Back at the horse again? "I think they put them on the lip, inside," says stupid friends. Have you ever pulled back the lip of a dead horse to look for tattoos? Worst, never have I ever. There were no tattoos, but then stupid friend says, "It's probably one of those tattoos that only lights up under UV." By then, most of the green herb had worn off, but there was that tiny little bit of paranoia still holding on for dear life. "What if there's a UV light lip tattoo on your horse, Henderson? They're gonna catch you for sure." So, there I was in the early South Dakota summer evening, cutting the lips off a day-old dead horse with a dull pocket knife. Bonus, we threw the lips into the woods a little ways because nobody's gonna go looking for horse lips in the woods, said my stupid friend. And that's how illegally dumping an animal carcass on federal property is the craziest crime I or anybody in my family have ever committed. This is a frickin' black comedy movie. What an absolute disaster from start to finish. Thank you for sharing it. I really wish I could see the after-credits scene where someone in a snowmobile crashed into the bloated, partially snow-hidden corpse, which then detonates in a rain of smelly viscera, enacting Gooseberry's final act of revenge on his tormentors. My dad's cousin erased all family members' names from a property deed except for his father's. The paperwork had been water damaged, so there was no easy way to tell what should have been there. Family law says that he also paid off some politicians and office workers to make the new deed stand. My friend got blackout drunk and stole a bulldozer that had the keys left in it. He turned it on and obviously didn't know how to drive it, so he just ended up making the scoopy part go up and down for a bit before the cops came. They actually let him go too. Well, he's dead now, but years ago my relative got into a bar fight and lost, so he went to his vehicle to get his rifle. Fortunately, the police arrested him on the way into the bar, so his charges were a lot less. He still did jail time, though. A distant cousin got her terminally ill father to give her power of attorney and then stole all of his money so she wouldn't have to split it with her brother. Don't worry, she did go to jail as her rush to clean him out involved a lot of fraud and forgery. When I was a young teen, the boys from the neighborhood and I loved playing pinball and video games at our local bowling alley. Problem was, we didn't have enough money to enjoy our new addiction. We decided to do something about that little problem. We started with a very rudimentary system. We actually scotch-taped a piece of thread to a quarter and were able to fish it up and down a couple of times before the string would break or the tape would give out. This worked fairly well, but we wanted and needed more. Our next plan was a little more professional. We somehow concocted a scheme to make quarters. A few lessons in science class had actually stuck, and we realized that we needed something to fool the coin mechanism in the pinball machine into thinking that whatever it was we made our quarters with was an actual quarter. We ended up deciding that lead would be our material of choice. We used lead for a couple of reasons. A couple of the guy's fathers was an avid hunter. He even reloaded his own shells. Because of this, he had a burner set up in his mod shop to melt down lead. Another reason is that lead is not magnetic. Science. We made a mold out of plaster and used the burner to melt lead to make our new quarters. But where to get more lead? One of us came up with the brilliant thought that tire weights were made of lead. Carrying screwdrivers and pliers, we scoured the parking lots of shopping centers. We'd wander through and drop down out of sight between cars. Using the tools we had bought, we'd managed to get the tire weights off with little trouble. We were in business. Our production line was soon up and running. We'd melt lead, pour it into our mold, cool it, and then move on to finishing our new quarter. The finishing process was crude but effective. We'd snip off the burr where the lead was poured. We'd then file down the edge, making sure it stayed mostly round. Using steel wool and polishing cloth, we'd then shine the quarters. Now came the trial run. We went to the bowling alley with a few quarters to see if our harebrained scheme would actually work. In they went, and the pinball machine lit up and was ready to be played. Success! We intensified our production, and soon we had bunches of quarters. We were thrilled. We could play video games anytime we wanted. Every day after school, you'd find us at the bowling alley, happily playing our games. But our downfall was soon to come. We never thought of the fact that someone might notice a bunch of fake quarters being used in their video games and pinball machines. It literally never crossed our early teenaged minds. We just knew we were having a blast. One fateful day, we went to the bowling alley as usual. We started playing games, and soon some men approached us. They started questioning us and accusing us. We were scared to death. One of the guys yelled, "Run!" and we took off as fast as we could. We made it to the doors and down the steps as we went. We all lived in the same cul-de-sac, and that's the direction we headed. Running as fast as we could, we briefly split up. The men that were chasing us only followed one of us kids. He made the colossal mistake of running straight into his house and through the front door. From there, our crime spree ended. A few days later, I was in class when I was called to the office. When I got there, my father was sitting with a man I'd never seen before. He was wearing a black suit with a black tie. I had to go before the principal, my father, and a member of the United States Secret Service. Although they take the counterfeiting of US currency very seriously, they understood that it was just a bunch of knucklehead kids making quarters to play video games. He actually told me that he was impressed with the quality of the quarters. He also said that they'd recovered over $75 in fake quarters. We'd made and used over 300 of those things. We had to make restitution for the money, and a charge was placed on our juvenile records. It was explained to us that if we kept our noses clean, the charge would be expunged. Luckily for me, I learned my lesson and stayed on the straight and narrow for the rest of my young adult life. And that, fellow people of the internet, is how I was charged with counterfeiting US currency. If that doesn't define the meaning of a crazy crime, I don't know what would. Could I just say that this is wild what you went through to play some pinball? I guess this means the old analog games are just as addictive as video games, huh? And to think that you could have had a paper round and made enough money for all the games of pinball you wanted, and you probably would have spent less time working per quarter? Oh god, and I forgot the vandalizing of all those people's cars. Oh, this is hilarious. Teens are so stupid. Jesus Christ. I used to drive for my green herb dealer. I was a new buyer, but I never asked questions and was cool with him. His car broke down and he asked if anyone could drive him. I said I would, and he liked that. I have my back windows tinted, but not my front windows. I'd pick him up and we'd drive almost all day. It was pretty chill. He'd give me free green herb and pay me $250 a day. I still worked my part-time delivery job, so I was happy. He got his car fixed and didn't need me to drive him around anymore, which was fine considering his ex snitched on him and he got busted a couple of weeks later. My uncle sold Tim Allen the white powder that got him sent to prison in the late 70s. Tim ratted him out. Then my uncle ratted out others. I honestly don't know much about it beyond that, though. I don't have much contact with that part of the family. My uncle was a pathological liar and a very troubled guy. He died by self-deletion about 10 years ago. My grandfather's father was a mean, bullying, hateful drunk who would come home from working in the mines long enough to terrify and bully his family and then leave again for mine work. He tried to set the house on fire with his wife and kids, all 13 of them, inside. Twice. One day my grandfather and a couple of his siblings were picking berries across the road from the house, and his drunk father started taking pot shots at them with his rifle. My grandpa, one brother, and his oldest sister took off running for the house with the agreement that the first one in there would put a stop to this once and for all. My grandpa's sister got there first and plugged him right between the eyes. She was never charged with the crime due to her age and the fact that everyone knew my great-grandfather was a mean son of a witch and had it coming. My dad got into a bar fight around 21 or so. He hit a guy so hard that he killed him. He went to prison, of course, but while working along the road, he stopped another prisoner that had attacked a guard and tried to escape. My dad was released for that. He never drank afterwards, and if he got angry, he just walked out of the house to cool off. He turned 81 a week ago, and he's the nicest, easiest-going guy you could ever meet. He never judges anyone. He once said to me, "We all make mistakes." For the record, I only heard about the story about 10 years ago from my brother. He told him during a road trip. He lived in a small town, and I have no idea what prison he was at or the official reason he was released, but considering it was probably around 61 or 62, they probably used whatever reason they wanted to for his release. When did you get into deep doo-doo for something you posted online? I worked at EA a couple of years back and saw a coworker get fired for posting pics, and a video if I recall, of the latest Battlefield on Reddit. A major breach of the NDA. They were threatening legal action, but decided against it. Still, lost his job over it. It surprises me how people will just sign things and not read them. I started a job last April at a large corporation. One of the things I signed said I read through and understand the handbook, which is a 40-page manual. I told my boss I'd like to read through before signing it. In it, it very clearly goes over the NDA. Like I'm not allowed to admit to working for my company on any site, anon or not. I can't post anything about work on any social media. Like, if I said something like, moving tables at work today in my restaurant job with an NDA, in theory, I could get fired. My friend and ex-coworker got fired from Guitar Center for doing an Ask Me Anything about working there. I posted a picture of a funny note at work a while back under a different username. It got tons of upvotes, but the paper was on top of something confidential. Some jerk Redditor decided it would be funny to enhance it and sent me a message letting me know he knew who I was and where I worked. I deleted the post, deleted that username, and started fresh with little to no information of my job or where I work, cause that freaked me out. Remember that guy who got fired from Google? Was it the one where the guy was excited for his first day and posted a picture of his uniform and got fired immediately? Well, he did sign an NDA, which he violated. I don't know if I'd call it trouble, but someone was able to figure out who I was. I've posted my picture on Reddit before, as well as details about the city where I live, but nothing else. They Facebook messaged me and threatened to come after me because they didn't like something I said. They were able to tell me where I was earlier that day at a particular time, which I definitely had not posted about, which was kind of creepy. I was scared for all of a day until I realized they were just bored and trying to freak me out. Nobody ever came for me. Yeah, the thing about those kinds of threats is that the vast majority of them are harmless, but you still need to be on your toes in case it's one of the minute number who are actually prepared to follow through on their threats and show up on your doorstep with a piece. Also, even if they aren't going to do it themselves, they still have a troubling amount of information about you, and they can distribute it to less scrupulous people. That crap is scary. Oh, yes. Reddit landed me a call with a Pittsburgh police detective. How he was able to figure out my cell phone number and my name from an anonymous Reddit account, I'll never know. A few months ago, I posted an image of a funny flyer I saw around my campus. Either to Reddit Pics or Reddit Funny, I forget. It was advertising a service called Friends of Minors that offered to buy booze for under 21s if they called the number printed on the flyer. Well, the number was the campus police. I knew that, that's why I thought the flyer was funny. I even put it in my title. It was obviously not made by the police, but a joke to get freshmen to call the police station and ask for booze. Well, I forgot I even posted it, but a few hours later I got a call on my cell phone from a blocked number. It was a detective from the Pittsburgh police asking for me by name. He said I recently uploaded an image from a website called Reddit that sparked a large wave of prank calls to the Pittsburgh police station and was interfering with the police's ability to handle real emergency situations that were occurring around the city that night. He told me I needed to remove that post immediately or alternative action would have to be taken against me. So I removed it immediately, obviously. Side note, it made the front page in like 3 hours. Wow. But I couldn't help but wonder why on earth people would simply see a phone number and immediately think, I should prank call this. I should prank call a police station. The freaking top comment on my post said something to the effect of, alright guys, you know what to do. Let's flood this police station with prank calls, then they'll be sorry. What the heck, guys? What the heck? In short, I posted an image of a flyer with a police station's number on it. Police station got tons of prank calls. I got a call from a detective demanding the post's removal. A girl posted on Reddit Trees that she was picking up her new boyfriend from the airport and posted some pictures of doobies, asking if she was doing it right. Well, her current boyfriend found the thread, not knowing he was being replaced, and that the guy was flying in and moving in that day. I remember hearing somewhere about a kid planning a school blasting who posted on Reddit about it. He got in real-life trouble for it, if I recall correctly. Yeah, he went to school with a high schooler that I work with. They eventually let him off the hook because they discovered he had no real means of harming students, but just wanted the day off school. I posted a picture of myself and someone found my Facebook. We had mutual friends, so he could see some of my private information, and then dug around and found some more. About 20 creepy personal messages later, I deleted everything and the account and made a new one. Lesson learned. And no, I don't think this will lead to him finding my account. I know a few other people personally that have the same problem I did. Thanks for your concerns, though. I didn't even have to post a picture, but someone on here didn't like a comment I made. It wasn't even directed at them, and they stalked all of my previous comments, tried to hunt me down online, threatened me, and wouldn't stop talking to me over my previous Reddit account. No lessons learned in my case, since I already knew that people were psychotic buttholes. So this topic is making me want to never ever post anything on Reddit ever again? Fair enough. I'm pretty sure that the general consensus is that all women on the internet are men, all children on the internet are FBI agents, all FBI agents are children, and roughly half of the men on the internet are women. Under an anonymous account I had, I posted something about my marriage, looking for advice. The advice I got, because it was a one-sided story, ended with, "Your husband sounds like a butthole." My husband isn't a butthole, he's a great guy, and he found the post, knew it was mine, and was hurt. He didn't leave me, but his feelings were needlessly injured. He's a great guy who doesn't deserve that. I immediately deleted the account. My husband's feelings are worth more to me than all the useless internet points. A lot of the power users on Reddit would be fricked if their identities got out. I once made a comment on Reddit that got so many upvotes that it showed up on my Facebook feed. I made some comment very subtly suggesting it was me, and someone figured it out. I had to delete my account ASAP because of all the weird stuff I'd said on it. My ex once dug through my history and found a post from like a year prior. Something creepy along the lines of, "Does anyone else look through the history of female Reddit users to find hot pics?" or something like that. It was a pretty tough thing to try and justify. She was like, "That's really creepy." I could only say, yeah, it is. Creepy internet justifications are the toughest of justifications. Female here. I just assume the majority of guys do this. Oh, and I'll save you time. There are no pictures on my account. Maybe not quite the answer that this thread is looking for, but I've been to a few Reddit meetups in my city. It's great, we always have fun, and I enjoy hanging out with other local Redditors here. But I wonder if anything would change if they knew that I was a teetotaling Christian. I mean, my faith and my abstinence from alcohol has never been an issue, but they're overwhelmingly secular and very drunk. It's fine. Not everyone can be allured by the secular ways. In all honesty, the narrator has read a lot of Reddit posts for his job, and honestly can say that his opinion on how open-minded the people of Reddit can be has become a lot more positive. Of course, there are still extreme crapsacks from every side of the political and religious spectrum willing to dole out extreme judgment on Reddit, but a lot of nice people too. My husband. He left his account open and I found his username. I didn't know he had a whole internet persona, as he's not into computers or internet. At least that's what I thought. I googled his username and hacked into an old email account. He told me he was just trolling when he was searching for men in our area to have fun bedroom times with, and swears that he never acted on it, and never gave out personal info. Then I found the email where he gave out his phone number. He swears he doesn't remember, it wasn't important and it was just trolling. We're now in counseling and divorce is still prominently on the table. In short, husband created an internet persona so real that it may cause my divorce. To answer some questions, yes, I knew his password as he uses the same one for everything. I thought saying hacked would be a brief way to say this. Second, he's not gay, he's bi. He's slept with many other women and had one encounter with a man that I know of. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that he is or was or wanted to cheat on me. It doesn't matter what orientation you are. When you stand up and promise that you don't want anyone else but this person for the rest of your life, you should mean it. And finally, no. I didn't expect cheating before I found this persona. I trusted him completely and thought he trusted me, and knew that I was open to him being bi. We'd looked at certain kinds of adult material as well as hetero stuff together before. No big deal. I thought we had an honest relationship, which is where the hurt comes from. I don't know if he hasn't fully accepted himself or if the lies were indeed about what he claimed he was really hiding, which was cheating on his best friend with his best friend's girl. I almost got myself and my former friend sued for a picture that I posted. I had to delete my Reddit account and write a formal letter of apology to the person who wanted to sue me and my friend. The only lasting damage was that one of my former best friends now hates me, although it's a little bit justified because he almost got expelled from his school for it. Yeah, this happened to me. I called someone a gay slur, and my mum made me say sorry. Hey, calling someone a cigarette is no laughing matter. I am a filmmaker and have been to Sundance, among other places. After the oil spill in the Gulf, BP called me up to ask that I make a series of pro-BP documentaries about how BP is awesome and nothing is really that bad in the Gulf. They offered a lot of money for budget and compensation. I was torn. I freaking hated this company, and the stuff that I was seeing in the Gulf infuriated me. So what did I do? I sought out advice on Ask Reddit about the pros and cons of taking this job. In the end, it was decided that I at least attend their first meeting to hear what they had to say. My Reddit post went up at 10 p.m. and at 9 a.m. I went in to meet the BP folks. They had printed out copies of my entire Reddit thread. Consequently, I left the building fast and didn't get the job, and I don't regret it at all. Thanks, Reddit. Classic BP, wasting a bunch of paper when they could have just as easily told you they saw it or showed you the post on a phone. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My now ex-girlfriend found out my account and saw that I'd spoken about her, anonymously of course, on the internet. She got pretty mad at me, and I got pretty mad at her for snooping on me like that. She said something like, "Most of the stuff you say is really funny," which really made me mad since it indicated she had been monitoring my activity. Reddit is sometimes like a personal journal to me and isn't really meant to be known to the people who are actually in my life. I doubt she still reads my account, but she still knows this one and could easily be reading this right now. So I don't know if anyone will believe me or if a mod there can confirm, but since 2008 or 9-ish, a couple of months after Reddit Philly started having meetups, I counted the number of Fs and Us in FU comics. I registered the subreddit name Reddit FU under my old name, Keyboard Duder. I was the only admin. I planned on making a few comics and letting people post their own. I sat on it for a while. Me and my girlfriend at the time got into an argument and I, like an idiot, used my normal account, with 2 years veterancy, a crap ton of karma and local subreddit presence, to make a post asking advice on the relationship. We talked later that night and out of nowhere she says, "Why don't you tell your friends on Reddit?" And it hit me that she was stalking my comments. She had plenty of quotes from people she ran by me too, and deleted a ton of comments which I foolishly said in passion, and I deleted my account too, because the name was tainted with a stalker. I wouldn't be surprised if this one was too. Years later, I look in retrospect and realize it was the dumbest thing I could have done with the account, even if it was the most convenient for the community, because the subreddit is bigger and better than I could have ever made it. But I feel so dumb. It's like I took my chips out right before I was going to win. I don't care if anyone believes me, I just want to make peace with it. Storytime. This year on Reddit, I posted a picture of me holding a log of number 2 and some bottles of my number 1 in my closet fort. All of the pictures have since been deleted from Reddit to save my identity further, but the damage has already been done. Fast forward 3 months from posting. I'm talking to a friend via IRC, which is Internet Relay Chat, when I link to my GitHub, which is a programming repository page. From there, he finds my blog, Google+, school, schedule, teacher, and the school email address of my teacher, and posts most of the information in the IRC channel. The next day, my programming teacher asks who had been mailing him asking about Black Joe, which is my IRC nickname, and who had been emailing him inappropriate pictures, threatening suspension for whoever was responsible. Thankfully, none of the images had my face in them, and I was never caught, but I came really close to being in deep crap. In short, crap, closets, blog, school. I feel like the author here hasn't properly explained why he took a picture of himself holding a big old chocolate log and the bottles of off-brand lemonade. And despite how gross it is, now that we've brought it up, I'm kind of insanely curious as to why and how this all came about. I'll never know, I guess. Back when I played World of Warcraft, I turned the guild's main tank in for a completely reprehensible real-life crime he'd committed in the guild chat. All I can say on YouTube is that it's one of the worst crimes you can do, and he certainly did time for it. The moderators instantly banned his account, and the guild leader kicked me and actually went to a lawyer to see if he could sue me for ruining the guild's endgame progression. I didn't find out about the lawyer until nearly 2 years later when one of the former guild officers told me about it. I thought he was yanking my chain until he started quoting case law about suing fictional characters. So I asked around and found a few other people who had been in the guild, and they all confirmed the story. That's when I said goodbye to all of my friends and logged out for the last time. It'll be 3 years in March. I had to dish out the trouble when I found my younger cousin's exposed photos she had posted on Gone Wild. Not cool. Not cool at all. If I recall correctly, there was an Ask Me Anything about 8 months ago of a dude claiming to be in the Air Force and doing something involving nuclear weapons, unloading them on planes or something. Turns out he was for real, and a number of people came very close to doxing him and actually did dox his commanding officer unless he took it down. In short, don't talk about your job handling nukes on Reddit. After a really confusing kind of breakup, I posted to Reddit Relationships asking for help, using my real account specifically so she'd know if it was me if she saw it. I explained the whole situation leading up to it. They all went off on how much of a terrible person she was, and how I should run far away and I should never stick my Johnson in crazy. A few hundred comments worth, it was front-paged. Some pretty specific insults towards her too. She saw it, she read it, and she realized it was her. She felt terrible. I felt almost as bad that she had to see what people had to say. She wasn't a bad person, and I can't explain the feelings when I got that text from her. We saw each other a few times after that and shared our I love yous and goodbye kisses, but I never got to apologize. Ali, if you're out there, I got over hating you. You only meant well. All the best to you in life. Thanks for the memories and experiences. I hope you and your husband are doing better and that he doesn't still want me dead. I posted a link to a friend's Facebook of a post I made on Reddit, and my ex-girlfriend saw it and read through like months and months of my comments and submissions. There was one from a long time ago that says something like, "My roommate's girlfriend annoys me slightly. She told her and I got yelled at. It wasn't too bad though. Me and my former roommate's girlfriend are really close now." There was a guy who lost his job at Google when he outed that they'd be selling Chromebooks, or whatever they call them, in the last year. This one wasn't on Reddit, but game FAQs. I said, I wanna bang this one girl, and they requested pictures, so I posted the direct link to Facebook. They found her and told her. Super awkward. I posted a picture of my workplace, and a general manager from across the country saw it and reported it to corporate and my general manager. I was supposed to be fired that night, but because of the people I work with, I wasn't. I won't post any details as I don't want them finding out. Deleted my account and the post. Good thing I kept my job because I got into an accident recently and have to pay $3,400 in repairs. Without that job, I'd be screwed. I only make minimum wage. Another forum I posted in a relationship subforum about me and my current girlfriend, about the issues we had, among other things. She saw the thread and we broke up because of that. She checked out my profile and figured out it was me. My ex posted a picture of her and I doing something after we'd broken up. We were both dating other people at the time. My girlfriend at that time was also a Redditor. She was not very happy after she saw that. I kinda got the opposite. My girlfriend looked at my subscribed subreddits and found out I was subscribed to splooge working girls and later let me splooge all over her. Positive result. Oh shoot, I can't find the story anywhere, but it was in Florida, where a Redditor whose dad was a detective leaked details about an investigation where a teenager snatched a little girl and tried to leave, but ended up not making it out. Police were looking into filing some kind of charges, but since the detective's son leaked really important details, they had to drop the case. I wonder whatever happened to that kid. A coworker asked for my Reddit username. No one in real life knows either this one or the other one I have. I thought that was the whole point. If you follow people you know, isn't that just glorified Facebook? That's what intrigues me about Reddit. I think I'm in the minority, but anyone else not like the people they know having their username? I posted a rant on how my now ex-girlfriend's mother was an outright B-word and how much I hated her. It was relevant to a topic. And I mean, I tore her apart in this post, describing how she treats me, her daughter, and everyone around her. Well, then my girlfriend ended up wanting to be cute and beat my karma score, so she started up a Reddit account randomly without me knowing and searched up my account. I used the same username for everything I go on, and she saw my post. Did I mention she's my ex now? That's relevant to this topic. I made a post after a fight with my girlfriend about how ignorant she was and how her parents kind of sucked at being parents. Now, she's not an ignorant person in general, I was just mad at the time, and her parents aren't crappy, but they were definitely being crappy that week. Anyway, she saw that I signed into Reddit but didn't know that I had an account. She found my post history, read that comment, and a crap storm ensued. She thought that she was stupid. False. She thought that I hated her parents. Very much false. She was also teed off that I told the world about those problems, even though no one on Reddit knows who I am, and therefore no one knew who I was referring to. That was a stressful couple of days. I shared my shock at the discovery of the fact that an ex of mine believes in ghosts. At first, she was upset for being made fun of on the internet, but it turned into a healthy conversation about beliefs and being judgmental, and we both gained something out of the conversation. One time, I commented with the "What the frick did you just say?" copy pasta and left my browser window open with the PC on sleep mode. A few days later, my mum comes to me with this disheartened and horrified look on her face with a printed out screenshot of the comment thread demanding an explanation for my ridiculous threats and profanity and lots of other things. Keep in mind that she's the stereotypical religious mum of Reddit atheism's meme posts. I tried for a really long time to explain the concept of a copy pasta, but it just didn't work. "What if the colleges saw this?" she cried. And to her point, if colleges got a hold of my comment history, I'd be screwed for worse reasons than the internet tough guy meme. I almost got sued by this girl I made a meme of. She said if I didn't take the meme down, she'd sue me and report me for bullying, getting me suspended from high school and ruining my shot at college. However, the meme still lives on some websites, and my school paper wrote an article about me. How did you scar someone for life? My sister used to sleep with this giant stuffed dog that was probably 4 feet long. She'd put it on the right side of the bed and cover the dog with a blanket so it looked like a body pillow. Anyways, in 5th grade, I thought it would be funny to play a prank on my little sister. I took out the dog and I climbed into her bed and covered myself with the blanket where the stuffed dog usually was while she went to talk to my mum. My sister comes back and climbs into bed to sleep while I'm laying in the bed with her without her knowing. It's dark in the room. I lay there in silence for maybe about 3 minutes when I finally go, "Hey." She literally screamed at the top of her lungs and ran out of her room so fast that she knocked over everything along the way to my mum's room. It was probably one of the funniest moments of my life. However, I did scar my sister so badly that to this day, and she's 20 now, before she climbs into bed, she always removes the blanket to check if anything is underneath. Needless to say, she almost had a panic attack watching The Grudge. You guys know the scene I'm talking about. So, what have the rest of you done that scarred someone for life? I just learned this month that one of my 3 sisters is afraid of vampires. I had accidentally tripped the breakers in the house one night while my parents were out, and I was watching them. I was 12 and my sisters all gathered in the back room, the only one that still had power. I saw this as an opportunity and targeted the youngest, who was 6. I told her that I'd cut off the power intentionally and that I was a vampire. I told her that I intended to eat her, and as I did this, I suddenly leaned in close and bared my teeth. All 3 of my sisters screamed, and the elder 2 fled the room, each out of opposite doors. The youngest, abandoned, instantly burst into tears and grabbed the nearest weapon, a serious pair of scissors, off a side table. As she lunged, screaming at my chest, I saw the fear and determination in her face, and I ran. I passed up my other 2 sisters on the way out and locked myself in one of the bathrooms. I screamed my confession of the joke immediately and begged my other sisters to calm her down. I learned that apparently the single light in the room had managed to shine red across my eyes at just the right moment and throw terrifying shadows across my face. Oddly enough, it was actually the second youngest that was scarred by this, refusing to watch a vampire movie to this day. I never threatened the youngest again. I went over to my friend's house. Right when I walked in, I could hear him doing the dishes. I walked by the kitchen and his back was to me, so I walked into the kitchen and just stood behind him. Like a foot behind him. I honestly have no idea how he couldn't have at least sensed me there. Then I just stood there smiling, waiting for him to turn around. After about a minute, he finally turned around and did one of those no-sound screams where he just inhaled loudly for about 5 seconds. He was also, thankfully, just washing his last spoon and not his last knife, because he spun the spoon around in his hand to stabbing position. It was honestly close to the hardest I've ever laughed. What got me was the silent scream and the look of absolute horror on his face. He says he still gets a little edgy when he's alone in the house washing dishes, or when he thinks he's alone. Well, I feel like this is as far as you should take this one, because your friend is now going to absolutely shank you if you are ever found to be standing behind him again. I've also done this to the same person a few too many times in a row, and now move deliberately, loudly around the house in the fear that the next time I surprise him may be my last. Best of luck to you.
This one happened to me. My older cousin once told me that when you flush the toilet, a monster will come out, and the only way to be safe is to enter another room before the flushing noise stops, because the doorway is a barrier. Even long after I stopped believing it, I kept doing this out of habit. Flushing the toilet still gives me a sense of impending danger and a desire to leave the room really quickly.
When I was 6, my parents took me to the Natural History Museum that featured a dinosaur exhibit with a T-Rex that would move its head and roar. In my mind, the sound of the toilet flushing was very similar to that of a T-Rex roaring. So clearly flushing the toilet would alert a T-Rex in the area, and it would come running over to eat me. From then on, I would make sure I was all done, pants buttoned up, door open, hands washed before flushing the toilet, and then I'd run the frick out and slam the door behind me. It only applied to our second-floor bathroom though, because the window in that room was the perfect height for a T-Rex's head to take a peek inside. Any other toilet was fine to flush, so I only got the urge at my parents' house to look out the window to check for random dinosaurs gallivanting around. I threw the frisbee for my dog and she kicked up a stick that stabbed her belly while running for it. She's deathly afraid of frisbees now. One day, when I was about 5, my dad brought home a pack of gummy bears that he got at work. He shared them with me, of course, but I kept playing with them. The way they reformed themselves after being crushed was oddly amusing until he told me that when you eat them, they'll reform in your stomach and climb out of your throat. Then he leaned in and whispered, "And they're gonna remember who did that to them." I still can't eat those darn things. My brother and I shared a room growing up. I'm a side sleeper, so I'd always be facing his bed as I drifted off to sweet slumber. Somehow, as my eyes slowly opened and closed, he could time it perfectly that I would close my eyes, open them, and behold, there he was at the foot of my bed. I still have trouble falling asleep, and we don't even share a room anymore. So I used to share a room with my sister when we were about 7. So one day before bedtime, I decided to draw a dog on the ceiling. Yeah, I was a little brat, and I justified it to my sister with, it'd be the first thing I'd see when I wake up, and then my day would be great. The cartoon dog turned out so great that my sister begged me to draw her one. I agreed and started drawing, but it wasn't a dog. It was a scary mother-frickin' onion man. It looked like a melting onion face. I don't know why I drew it. It really messed her up. She had nightmares about him, and my parents moved her out to a different room. In short, I drew a scary onion man above my sister's bed. She refuses to buy me Christmas presents to this very day. I should clarify that it was about 14 years ago and it's long since been painted over. As I remember, it looked exactly like a grumpy, rotting onion face. Just imagine an onion face, then imagine it decomposed and grumpy. My brother still flinches every time a butterfly flies by because I told him they were poisonous. He's almost 18 now. I waited for my dog to come through the dog door, and when I saw him on his merry way, I stuck my head out of it and screamed, "Boo!" He's never used that dog door again. Damn me, now I have to let him out all the time. My brother came into the bathroom when I was having a bath at about 4 years of age. He asked if I'd like to hear a story and then proceeded to tell me a horrifying story about monsters. As he neared the end of the story, he turned off the light switch and said, "If you put 1 foot out of the bath, the monsters'll get you." He shut the door, leaving me alone in the pitch-black bathroom. The water got colder and colder, but I didn't move a muscle. Mum found me there about 3 hours later, scared stiff and crying. Screw everything about baths. I had an awesome Labrador growing up. The nicest, friendliest, happiest dog I've ever known. We were at my aunt's house when he was about 2, and he saw a horse for the first time. He went to investigate and was carefully smelling the horse through the fence, bringing his nose up to meet the horses. When his metal choke collar touched the electric fence, he yelped and ran and turned into a trembling, slobbering mess anytime he saw a horse for the rest of his life. I did not expect this many stories about people traumatizing their poor doggos when I began writing this script for the video. They're delicate animals and apparently very prone to learning way too much from their mistakes. Poor poochies. I hope your gentle souls were soothed by the eating of many treats. When I was in 6th grade, we were studying surface tension. I thought it was really fascinating and started asking my teacher all kinds of questions. I guess my eagerness was annoying because when I asked Mrs. Vance why soap would break the surface tension of water and how it worked, she rolled her eyes at me. "You know, Susan, if you'd start washing your hands after you go to the bathroom, you wouldn't have to worry about things like that." The class laughed at me and teased me for weeks. That one moment completely changed the way that I did school. Instead of asking questions in class, I remained pretty silent unless forced to talk, and I started memorizing textbooks to avoid feeling that way in class ever again. I recently did this to my significant other. I waited until he was going into his room, the light was off, and I hid next to the light switch and cupped my hand over it. He went to turn on the light, felt my hand, and freaked the F out. He's a big man with a deep voice, sounds like Peter Steele. He went up about 8 octaves and squealed like a little girl. Fricking hilarious. He now sticks his head into the room before turning on the light. Next time he does this, I'm going to put my hand over his face. My older brother loves to stay up late and play video games in our basement. One night we had a scary movie marathon with the lights off. When we were done, I pretended to go upstairs and hid behind our sofa. After about 10 minutes of playing games, I whisper, "Do you want to play a game?" I have never seen him move that fast in his life. He still refuses to play video games late at night 6 years later. I remember thinking when I was younger about how spontaneous death is after the death of my grandfather. Now, whenever I leave somebody's room or house or whatever, I say something incredibly kind to them. That way, if they do die, the last thing I've said will have been awesome. From the time when I was about 3, my big brother told me all sorts of bugs and earwigs would get inside my ears while I slept, and they'd eat my brain. He went into horrible details of how they'd reach my eyes and slowly eat them, and it would be the most painful experience of my life. I sleep with a blanket over my head at all times and wake up in the morning to check my ears the very first thing. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One day when I was about 7, my little brother being about 5, my mum took me, my brother, and my friend to a carpet and fabric store for some improvement project she was doing. Us kids wandered off and started exploring this maze of carpet walls, and in the middle of our exploring, my friend and I shot each other a look that it was time to mess with the young one. Immediately we both scream, "Oh my god, it's here!" and take off running. My brother has no idea what's going on, but instantly starts panicking. He's running, trying to catch up with us, and is freaking out, saying, "What? What is it?"
My friend and I stop to catch our breath, and we look up at the top of the maze as if we were making sure that we were safe from some danger. We then tell him that we saw the African killer moth, a rare species of moth that grows from eggs planted in exotic fabrics, and that one bite from the moth can be deadly. My brother goes pale, and just as he's about to ask us something, I look up and yell, "Oh my God, it's back!" as my friend and I take off running and ditch my now crying and fearing for his life brother. This goes on about another 10 minutes until my mum finds us and yells at us all for being stupid. All fine and dandy, or is it? Cut to a couple of years back when I'm a senior in high school and my brother's a sophomore and the whole family's hanging out in the living room. Me, him, mum, and dad. We're all talking and suddenly a huge mother of a moth flies in and starts running into the ceiling lights. My brother turns white. My dad and I are laughing at how big the thing is and how we're going to need a bowl just to catch it. Meanwhile, my brother is just on the brink of losing it. My mum and dad are brainstorming how to get out when I just say, "It's easy, we just turn off all the lights except one and it'll head towards that one." My brother flips, just loses it. "No!" He breaks down and starts crying as he runs into his room and slams the door, screaming the whole time. Yeah, I traumatized my little brother. Not quite scarred, but my sister hates every time we retell the story. I think I was about 12 and my brother was 10. My mum and 3-year-old sister went out to run errands while my brother and I stayed behind. While they were gone, we took my sister's favorite toy, a stuffed lamb named Lammy, and put the shredded up top of a white tube sock around its neck. Like Lammy was wearing a collar made of shredded up sock. We stuck Lammy's body in between the couch cushions, but left its head exposed with the shredded sock collar visible. We scattered some of my mum's cotton balls around and voila! It looks like Lammy's severed head was waiting to greet them on the couch. When my sister came home, she let out a quiet, "Who did this?" and immediately burst into tears. We were grounded, she was fine, and at 31 years old, I still feel like a complete jerk. We totally got her though. Huh? I mean, yeah, you basically staged the murder of a loved one as a prank on an infant, so it is funny. But yeah, you don't get to pass through the pearly gates unless you've passed some more tests to prove that your conduct has reversed lately. My brother and one of his friends used to sit in his room and mess around on a Ouija board. It freaked out my grandma, who was extremely superstitious, really badly, so my dad and I decided the seances had to stop. I recruited one of my friends from college, who my brother had never met, and got a pair of pure black contacts. I had my friend put them in and hide in my brother's room. Note that on a TV show my brother watches, characters who are being possessed usually appear with black eyes. When my brother and his friend started using the board, he popped out at them and started hissing. Brother and friend ran screaming out of the house and refused to sleep in his room until I finally told him it had been a prank a month or so later. In short, I tricked my 13-year-old brother into believing that Satan had materialized in his bedroom. My older brother used to play this really fun game whenever we were in a swimming pool together. He'd pretend he was the shark and I would pretend I was a panicky, screaming 5-year-old who could barely swim. Then he'd pull me under the water. 20 years later and I still hate swimming. Older brothers, we love you, but F you. Sincerely, your better looking and more successful younger brothers. Scaring people once is funny. Making them live in fear is hilarious. Keep in mind that I weigh more than 250 pounds. My brother, age 20, has always been kinda jumpy. He says it's good reflexes, but it's just skittishness. I decided to help him with the problem. Over the past 2 years, I've hidden in virtually every nook and corner of our house. In closets, under furniture, inside cabinets. Places a big old fatty like myself should not be able to fit. Every time he thinks he's found all the hiding spots, I find a new one. I've hidden under and even in his bed only to jump out and scare him crapless. He lives in a world of paranoia when he gets home. At night when he reads in bed, at regular intervals he gets up and checks around the room with a flashlight to make sure that I'm not there hiding in the darkness. He even checks the closet multiple times a night to make sure I somehow didn't sneak into it when he closed his eyes just for a second. All of this is leading up to my final hiding place. He doesn't know it yet, but I brought a mattress that I'm storing at a friend's house. Slowly, I've been carving a me-shaped hole in it, and I'm going to replace his mattress with it, cover myself in a mattress topper, and the moment he lies down in bed, his mattress will get him. There's this dumb kid who dropped out of high school who likes me.
And I mean really likes me. We're both in our 20s now, but he's completely obsessed with me. He has absolutely no life plans, and he's stuck in a plumbing business with his younger, but slightly more attractive, if I have to admit, brother. He makes no effort to get his life together at all. He likes to think that I'm his girlfriend, and he tells that to everyone he knows. He always tries to put his arm around me and make a move, even though I'm fiercely trying to tell him that I have no interest in him whatsoever. And that's not even the worst part. He's a heavy substance user, and I mean frickin' heavy. He does so many shrooms that I'm kind of surprised he has the money to eat, not to mention paying the bills. The bottom line is the dude is insane. I have a boyfriend. He's really big and muscular, and I like him a lot. His only flaw is he's a bit aggressive, and occasionally he'll take me out to lunch or to a movie date or something, but God forbid the dumb kid finds out, because if he finds out, he sets out to find me. For some reason, he thinks that my boyfriend is trying to kill me secretly or something. I don't know what he thinks, but it would pretty much scar him for life if I told him this flat out, and that I don't want him, and that I already have a boyfriend and he's not kidnapping me. That's why I never tell him. He's messed up as it is already. I don't want to drive him to self-deletion. I just wish Mario would leave me alone, and I wish his moronic brother Luigi would stop helping him. When I was little, I had a blue bear, whose name was creatively Blue Bear. Well, Blue Bear did nothing to anyone, ever, primarily because he's an inanimate object. Parents were away, and of course my brothers torment me. It was winter, and they told me he was cold, so they set him on fire. But then he was too hot, so they buried him in snow. Then he got too cold, so they cut his head off. Yeah, I don't get that logic either. He's fine though, my mum fixed him up, and he's still sleeping with me at the ripe age of 25. Brothers are horrible creatures. I was an unplanned C-section. That counts as scarring someone for life, right? That's a very literal interpretation of our subject here, but actually your mother, in all honesty, probably didn't relish this memory either, so I'd say you probably fit the criteria. Well done. My brother is horrified of walking past beds, because when he was 5, he was going to get some clothes from our mum's room. I heard him coming up the stairs, so I ran into my mum's room and hid under her bed. He came in and walked past the bed, and I grabbed his ankles and pulled him under the bed. He was horrified. Now he always checks under beds before walking near them, and he hops into bed because he's afraid he might get pulled under. I'm a horrible older sister. My brother had this issue in the bathroom where he has to open the shower curtain every time he goes to take care of business. So one time, I put his giant stuffed tiger in there and waited about 2 hours. I suddenly heard the single girliest scream I've ever heard come out of another male's mouth, and he was running down the hallway. Many laughs were had and jimmies were rustled. I was on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds about 8 years ago, and my buddy's girlfriend kept asking if she could get my other hit over and over again, and I finally asked, "Have you ever tripped before?" She didn't. Anywho, she eventually got it, and everything was fine when we were listening to music in her room with my friend until she stopped talking and kept shaking her hair. She thought she was mildly bugging out, but it got worse. She started shrieking and shaking her hair more violently, and my friend didn't know what to do about his scared crapless tripping girlfriend, and neither did I. My trip was wearing off, my reality set in while witnessing someone else's reality fade out of orbit. Screaming, louder and louder, her mum enters the scene, and I'm literally backing up to the window to make an observation to see if I could jump 3 stories. She's still mute, besides screaming, and her mum is terrified, and so am I. My friend tells me that he thinks someone put something in her beer at the party that we didn't go to. She asks us to leave, and we did. She was fine, and slept it off. She told us that she thought spiders were all over her head, and an unexplained force kept her from talking. She thinks it was a bad ghost. Her and my friend broke up several years later, and during that time she kept checking her hair for spiders, and how she was scared of total darkness. 'Cause that's when the demons come out. I've not seen her in several years, but I think she's still messed up because I dosed her up and gave her a trippy critter nightmare from hell. In short, I gave a girl some pretty strong substances and she thought spiders and demons were consuming her, and now she checks her hair every day a lot and is scared of the dark. What random act of kindness immediately came back to bite you in the butt? A few minutes ago in the McDonald's drive-thru, I offered to pay for the meal of the car behind me. The girl at the window looked puzzled and then handed me a receipt to sign, because their order was so large. What random act of kindness have you instantly regretted? I just finished an 8.5-hour shift pushing shopping carts at a higher-end grocery store. Someone asked me to help them back their car out, and I figured, why not? I helped this elderly lady back out of her spot very slowly to the point where it took about 2 minutes. As she pulled away, she told me,
"Who'd have thought a Jew could be so useful?"
But justice prevailed. Using my superpower of memorizing license plates, I memorized hers, and every time I saw her car, there would be a crap ton of carts surrounding it. She hit them a couple of times as she was backing out and dinged her door on them after I strategically placed them just far enough from the car. Suck it, witch. When I was about 9 years old, in the 90s, my best friend and I were very into collecting Marvel action figures. We must have owned at least 60% of all the marketed characters. Whenever we had a free time, we'd ride our bikes to Kmart and look at what they had. I didn't ever have an allowance, but any money I did get usually went to feed my collection. One week, my distant cousin came out to visit us. My friend and I tried to be cool and show him a good time, but something about him seems a little off. We ignore it and include him in our regular thing. We happen to be in Kmart one day and we see a Super Skrull. I'd never seen one before and I wanted it. My cousin wanted it too. They only had one in the store. We hid it behind some other action figures so it wouldn't be bought, and I went home to get my money. While I was at home, and since my mum had my money and would always ask what it was for, I told her it was to get a Super Skrull, and my cousin mentioned that he wanted it too. So my mum told me I should buy it for my cousin. The thought horrified me. I did it anyway, and he never let me play with it, and I never saw another one at my store again. He moved to California after that, and I never saw him again, but about a year later I talked to him on the phone. I asked if he still had it. He sounded confused for a second, and then told me he'd thrown it away. I know it was a coerced act of kindness, but it was still my biggest childhood regret. And that, dear listeners, is why all cousins are terrible until they reach adulthood. They should neither be trusted nor offered any avoidable gifts out of one's own pocket. This excerpt from the guide on how to be an awful family member was brought to you by the narrator.
Okay, here's mine. I was holding the door open for this girl, and then comes another, and then another, and it became a whole line of people I was obligated to hold the door for as my party left me behind, oblivious to my fate.
That's why you hold the door open while standing in the doorway. The person following has to hold it open for themselves, and you move on. What happens next is not your concern. Once, I did the reach back and hold the door with one hand for the next guy to grab it and move. The next guy walked right through without looking at me, followed by his wife and 5 or 6 kids, who mostly just stared down at a phone or a handheld game console. All of them walked through without so much as acknowledging my existence. So I let the door go early and knocked the last kid on the butt. I was standing in the line at a very busy grocery store with a cart full of groceries when a friendly-looking old guy walks up behind me with one loaf of bread in his hands. I turned around to him and said to him, "It's pretty busy in here, huh? You can go ahead of me if you'd like." He gets a huge grin on his face and yells at a lady who's standing at the till next to us at the back of the line. "Anna, get your butt over here." There must have been $400 worth of groceries in her cart. There was a long line of people waiting to get their orders at Chipotle. One person asked for an extra handful of steak in their burrito. We really aren't supposed to add too much, so we kind of ration it throughout the day, but apparently everyone heard this guy's order, and surprise, everyone requested extra meat. The manager was in that day and gave me a disapproving look, while I looked back at him giving a desperate shrug. I also ripped up a couple of burrito shells by accident because there were so many more extra ingredients. This enraged the impatient line. Yeah, not such a good day for yours truly. This is a random act of kindness that was bestowed upon me, and I regret not stopping it. So I'm driving my sister's car one day because mine was being repaired. Her boyfriend is at the Naval Academy, so she has a Navy bumper sticker displayed very prominently on her rear window. It's also double-sided, so one can read it by looking straight back. I have no idea why this exists, but I noticed it later. I drive through a Chick-fil-A because I'm hungry, and it's delicious, and I realize right after I order and pull ahead in the drive-thru that I don't have my gosh darn wallet. This is a huge thing because I've never ordered something in a drive-thru and not been able to pay for it. Nor have I ever not had my wallet when called upon to pay for something that I ordered. So I'm looking frantically around under her seat, near her console, among other things. It's not a very familiar car and it has a black interior, unlike my car which has a grey interior. My wallet is black. I finally get to the window and, still walletless, I say, "I'm sorry, this is so embarrassing, but I think I lost my wallet." She leans out a bit and looks at the car, which is a mid-size SUV. The bumper sticker is very prominent, from just about any angle, assuming that by some miracle they haven't already seen it. This place isn't in a great area, and there were cameras all over. Then she says, "1 second," and withdraws, closing the window. I twiddle my thumbs and she leans out a few seconds and says, "It's all right, sir. It's on Chick-fil-A tonight." I respond, "Wow, thank you so much." She replies, very serious-faced, "No, sir. We should be thanking you." This is really puzzling, but I'm still in "crap, I'm driving without a license" mode, and stop the car to look further. I didn't find it, whatever. I go home and the wallet is under the passenger seat. I guess I'd made a hard stop and was wearing gym shorts and it had slid out. And then I realized that I had an extra chicken sandwich. This is an amazing day. Only then did I realize that it was because I was mistaken for a serviceman and given free and extra food. I just didn't realize this at the time because, hey, free food, and hey, no freaking license or money. In short, someone gave me free food because they thought I was in the Navy. Turns out, I'm not. Ugh, this question just brought back a terrible memory. My mum called me from work one day because a deaf lady got a flat tire and didn't have AAA. My mum knew she had no money because her card got declined often, so she asked me to put her spare tire on. I went over and it was a minivan with the spare strapped to the underside of the car. The bolts were all seized. I had to get WD-40 from the store to get them loose. I told her that I was likely going to break the bracket under her car. She seemed okay with it. Since it was rusted out, it did indeed break. I had a hard time with everything because the car was in such disrepair. But I did get the spare on for her. She never thanked me and drove off. I did notice at this time that she had a healthy son in the seat of the car playing a handheld video game. He was about 15 and could have helped. End of story, right? Wrong. She comes to my mum's work telling her that I caused thousands of dollars in damage to her car and she wanted me to pay half. My mum told her to get lost. She said that she would get lost in exchange for filling up her tank with gas. My mum called me and I went over. And this is where things get crazy. I refuse, so she says okay, and things are going to get terrible for me. She calls over 2 of her friends. I guess to intimidate me? They both were the size of Uncle Kip from Napoleon Dynamite. Anyway, they weren't going to do anything, but she breaks down and cries. She's going to lose her son, she says. She just needs money to eat. I told her I don't believe her and to leave. So she slaps me in the face. How can she slap? Anyway, the police are called and they tell her to leave. She backs her van into my car, causing a $700 repair bill. The police saw it and said there was no point in going after her, she has no money. So I paid out of pocket because I didn't want a claim that was $200 over my deductible on my history. I saw her once again after that at the bank. She tried to apologize and I told her she owed me $700. She promptly walked out. I regret helping her so much. My goodness, is anyone else just being made wary of literally all other human beings? I'm still going to extend some pity to this lady. You have to be pretty desperate to fake willingness to have a lawsuit to get some petrol. I picked up a 61-year-old woman in my car after I saw her carrying groceries down the side of the road in this heat wave. I should have known that it was bad news because it was 103 degrees and she was carrying milk. So I take her down the street and we chat a bit. I get there, she gets out and walks to the door. No one knows who she is. She lived here 25 years ago and now I had to call the cops and deal with the whole situation of finding this woman's family. Turns out she had dementia and thought that she still lived where I drove her. She actually lives closer to the place where I picked her up. 4 years ago, freshman year. I was selling my PlayStation 2. My friend wanted one for his cousin. I offered to sell him mine, but he had no money. Well, being the idiot I am, I'm like, that's okay, just pay me when you can. Needless to say, I never got my money. I was in a busy clothes shop a few months back when a woman with her baby in a pram were coming towards me down a narrow aisle. Her baby dropped or threw one of its toys out of the front of its pram, so instead of the mother having to push around to the front of the pram to retrieve it, I picked it up and gave it back to her baby. She then proceeded to give me a look of total disgust and say, "Oh, thanks," and then shoved past me to leave the store. Agreed to help one of my best buds, a guy who I'd been good friends with since we were in elementary school, with our classwork. We were the same major at a local college. 2 days later, he rushes for a frat and starts pretending like he doesn't know me except for when we have class together. We didn't speak for a solid 2 years after that semester was over. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Every time I decide to tidy up the living room while my mum is out so she isn't stressed all the time. The instant she gets home, "You forgot to put away the cereal this morning. I had to put it away for you." "Yeah, thanks, I just cleaned the whole living room for you, by the way, in case you had friends coming or something." "Why would I invite people over if the house is a mess?" "You're right, how silly of me to assume you had any friends." Every darn time. Helped a lady out to her car with her groceries once. As I was helping her put them in her car, the lady in the vehicle next to hers didn't see me and slammed the hatch of her van down onto the back of my head. She opened her door sometime between trips to the cart to put the groceries away, I guess. I don't remember much, just mumbling that I was sorry and had to go and leaving the lady I was helping as I went back into the store to wait for my husband to pick me up because I wasn't fit to drive. Turns out I had a concussion and I had to go to the ER and all sorts of other good stuff. Later, I guess the rest of the story was that the lady just threw her Thanksgiving turkey into the back of her van and left as fast as she could when she had realized what she had done. Apparently she didn't even ask if I was okay, just gave a look of horror and left as fast as she could. Happy Thanksgiving, you crock of number 2. I hope you rot in heck. Around 6 years ago when Pokemon hit India, we would get these Jenga cards in a particular brand of chips called Uncle Chips, and it was extremely rare to find a Pikachu card. So this one day I decided to buy 2 and I gave one to my elder D-bag brother as his bag didn't have a Jenga card. That jerk got the Pikachu, and he didn't even give it to me. I hate you, Angelo. One year on the 4th of July, my parents were hosting a big barbecue at our house for family and friends. And we were having a ton of people over. My mum was talking about having so much to do to get ready for it and having so much food to make, and she seemed really stressed out over it since we rarely have that many people over. I felt really bad for her since she seemed overwhelmed, and I offered to help out in some way, but she said no, it was fine. One of the things she talked about having to do was make a ton of cupcakes the morning of the barbecue. So at midnight on the 4th, after my parents were asleep, I made a crap ton of cupcakes. I baked multiple batches, waited for them to cool, put icing on every one of those mother effers, and decorated them with 4th of July related things. It took me hours and I finally managed to finish right before my mum woke up. I was pretty proud of myself since they turned out really nice, and I felt good that I managed to take a few hours off my mum's workload for that morning. Later that morning, after my mum woke up, she came into my room and the first words out of her mouth were, "That's all you made? That's never going to be enough. You didn't use the right icing. We have tons of people coming and now I'm going to have to make more," etc., etc. I felt awful. I was just trying to help. I really regretted it, especially since I could have used that time to finish up a paper. God damn, that's insensitive and mean. Your guests can be damn thankful for anything they get, and I'm sure they would have been fine with the cupcakes. This is the moment where a good parent swallows their pride and says thank you, even if they don't think that it's enough. Maybe make another small extra batch if you aren't sure, but don't shoot your super nice kid down that way. I went to help my buddy get out of a pool when he reached his hand out for help. Then he braced against the wall and pulled me in. Jerk. Huh? That's when you put Benadryl into his alcoholic drink later in the night, and when he's bordering on unconscious, you throw him into the pool. Oh, what? Do you need my help? No, now you drown. As a child, I used to collect keys. I had a shoebox full of random keys, all of which I loved dearly. My older sister's friend was over one time, and while secretly going through her makeup, I broke her powder. Crushed and embarrassed and trying to figure out how I could repay her, I gave her all of my keys. Every single one of them. As an adult, I realize now that she probably didn't give a crap about my keys. And to this day, I still wish I had them. My boyfriend lived with his sister and they did their whole cleaning war thing. The whole, "I'm not going to put this up until he or she cleans this up" bullcrap. I tried to help by doing the chores for them sometimes because the place was disgusting. I was doing the dishes one day and asked where their garbage disposal was. My boyfriend kind of showed me, then went back to playing video games or whatever he was doing. Turns out there was no garbage disposal and I clogged their drain. His sister wasn't happy. I offered to help my brother write a paper for English. He's in college and I'm in high school. I was so OCD about getting him a good grade that I ended up spending 6 hours rewriting the entire thing, until 1 a.m. I regretted it the second I read the first paragraph and realized his paper was complete crap. I witnessed a car accident while stopped at an intersection. This guy turned right in just as an old lady stepped off the curb to cross the street. I saw her get hit, jumped out of the car, ran across the intersection during a green light, so I could have gotten hit by a car too, got up to her lying bleeding all over the pavement and asked her, "Are you okay?" To which she replied with, "Of course I'm not." It was stupid of me to ask that question, but it's kind of a habit when you see someone hurt. I wish she hadn't been such a witch to me about it, but then again, she did just get hit by a car. Maybe she thought you were the one who hit her. Quite plausible, especially with all the sudden shock involved. I offered to help a workmate move when I was drunk. He called the next day when I was 11 out of 10 hungover, after too much tequila, and asked me to come help out. I moved his boyfriend's, and other roommates' crap over a 12-hour period. Just the two of us, and he couldn't lift anything heavy. Up 3 stories with no elevator. F my life. I once had my cousins visit, and the two of them were hanging out in my room. At the time, I'd been saving up money so I could buy something special. It just so happened that I put the $1,000 into one of my purses hidden in my closet. So the youngest asked if she could have a purse, and I said, "Sure, you can have any one you'd like. Just make sure that you check the inside." So she checked the inside, and I had a strong feeling that it was the purse with the money she had chosen to take. She did. I asked her if I, myself, should check it, yet she insisted that it was indeed empty. As soon as they left, I regretted taking her word and couldn't help but check every single purse. She had it for sure. A week later, I confronted them and they admitted it and told me they gave it to their mother, and their mother thought it was fake, so she, quote, threw it away. I'm not entirely sure what happened to the money. I stopped to help a car that had overheated. They stopped about a half-mile from a gas station, and I decided instead of making him walk, I'd go to the next exit and get him water. The next exit was 14 miles away. I would have felt too guilty about leaving him there waiting, so I did it anyway. I had to drive 28 miles out of the way when I had an hour drive ahead of me late at night with an early morning start at work. I should have let him walk. I used to be a night auditor at a hotel. There was only one other night auditor there, and she was a middle-aged woman who also waitressed at 2 other jobs. As a result, she was extremely overworked and would ask me to cover 1 or 2 shifts a week. Every shift we worked was from 11 until 7. One day she called me at 5 p.m. asking me if I could cover for her. I said yes, even though I hadn't slept yet. I grabbed a few meager hours of sleep and headed in. About an hour into the shift, I started falling asleep and regretted the crap out of my decision. I regretted it more when I realized I was scheduled to volunteer the following morning. At the airport the other day, I saw an elderly lady struggling to take her bag off the bus that moves from the plane to the terminal. So I approached the lady and picked up her bag for her, only to not realize her bag wasn't closed properly, so when I picked it up, all of her clothes fell out. Thus ended my random act of kindness as I ran away. I gave away my copy of Mega Man Legends 2 to an impoverished 6-year-old I rode the school bus with. I'd also given him a PlayStation and a bunch of other games, but did I really have to give him a rare game I'd get nostalgic about later? I had the inverse of this question happen a couple of days ago. I was at the airport waiting to be picked up after my flight was cancelled. It got pushed to the next day. So I'm killing time on Reddit, of course, when a young, slightly chubby Hispanic woman sitting nearby begins sobbing. I figure she's just really stressed or got some bad news, and I stay comfortably within my bubble. But she keeps sobbing and sobbing. People are glancing back and becoming uncomfortable. It occurs to me that maybe I should be the one person that gives a crap and ask how she's doing, but then it occurs to me that I could be opening up a can of crazy. At this point, she's getting loud and starting to cause a scene. Before I can decide whether to talk to her, an airline attendant appears and asks her what's wrong. I can't hear the conversation, but this woman is not being reasonable and by now is bawling very loudly. Eventually, TSA comes over, then the police, and then finally a paramedic who seems to determine she's hysterical. I decide I'm a little too close for comfort and step out for a smoke. Just in time to see an ambulance pull up and carry off the woman, strapped down to a stretcher, crying so loudly I can hear it 60 feet away over traffic. I'm glad that I listened to my inner heartless jerk. In short, didn't comfort a crying stranger, and that was a very good call. At what moment did you realize you were dating a complete moron? We were driving around this weird part of Las Vegas and I said, "This is surreal." And he said, "I know, it's so real." I repeated, "Surreal," and he repeated, "So real." We were watching Django, and during the winter training montage, there is a moment where the camera pans over a herd of reindeer. At that moment, my ex said something about how she thought it was weird that they would include reindeer in the movie because it kind of breaks the immersion. I was confused and asked what she meant by that. She went on to explain to me how reindeer weren't real animals and just make-believe characters in a fairy tale, like Rudolph and the rest of Santa's reindeer. I asked him what event resulted in World War I. His response was September 11th. He was serious. When she flipped out because her third grader came home with the word erect on a spelling list and was on the verge of calling the school. She honestly had lived her entire life not knowing that that word had any other use aside from describing the state of a man's Johnson. I dated a guy for about a month until I found out that he didn't realize that women's chests made actual milk to feed their baby. He thought that describing the act of chest feeding was just a way to hold a baby while giving it a bottle. I told him he was an idiot, and he said with a disgusted sneer, "I didn't know that because I've never known any woman who had or would feed their child that way." I told him that I'd fed my son that way, and he called me a child mistreater. When she thought I was crazy for putting Pop-Tarts in a toaster. Or maybe it was the time she tried making Hamburger Helper for the first time at 27 years old and called me from the store to ask where they sold the brown hamburger meat. I can't believe I dated that. I'm wasting away to nothing. Send help. Oh, and I almost forgot the best part. She's teaching your children right now in an American public school. The first time I thought this was when he told my parents he was a meatitarian because he eats everything. The same guy told me that the bumps on the side of the highway are so blind drivers know when they've run off the road. High school boyfriends. He was hot though. Well, we've all dated the gorgeous idiot. Fun and games until your resentment at the sheer lack of mental activity going on also just makes you completely uninterested in doing anything else with them as well. I had been dating this girl for a few months, and it was Christmas time. We weren't super serious, but it was serious enough that I was buying her Christmas presents. I found something for her that was perfect, and it had a connection to some funny event involving her and my cat. So I made the present from the cat. I thought I was being cute and she'd make the connection. Instead, she got angry that my cat got her a present, and I didn't. I thought she was joking. To make matters worse, we were at her parents' place and they backed her up. It was extremely awkward and I realized it wasn't going to work out. The moon is so beautiful tonight. That's a street light. You know that, right? When I was helping her with geography homework and she couldn't point out our own country on the map. When she pointed up at a bluish star and sincerely asked, "Is that Earth?" When she surprised me by inviting her mother on our 16-day Hawaiian cruise. She got me Mad Libs, and when it was her turn to do a noun, she asked, "What's a noun?" I said, "It's a person, place, or thing." There was a long silence as she thought. It went on for so long that I thought she must be thinking of the best noun I'd ever heard. Then she said, "Place." Back in college, I saw a fleur-de-lis tattoo on a girl's butt for the first time. "What made you decide to get a fleur-de-lis tattoo on your butt?" "I don't know. I wanted something tribal." She told me with a straight face that our horoscopes had changed and it was a bad idea to be together. In high school, I was in an extracurricular program after school. There was one portion of it that was pretty much all girls. I dated one girl from this portion all throughout high school. I went to all of their events and helped out. I always wondered why none of the other girls or their parents really talked to me. Right before we graduated, I brought it up to her, and she told me that she told all of them that I was physically and verbally attacking her all the time. When I asked her why, she told me it was so no one else would steal me away from her. I broke up with her shortly after that. When I saw her water her plastic plant for the third time, I don't know, the first 2 times I was sort of stunned and curious. The second time she actually said,
"The water just goes right through."
I've had this one cactus for maybe 2 years now. It leaks, so I kinda never watered it. At this point, I don't know if it's artificial or organic, but I don't really want to break it to find out. So I just keep it by my other plants and I don't think about it.
She kept trying to put food inside the rolling pin and then try to flatten it by just rolling it around.
I'm trying to imagine a rolling pin constructed in a way where you could put food inside of it. I've got that classic solid wooden roller design in my mind, and that's all I can think of. Okay, so apparently lots of people here have rolling pins that are hollow, so you can fill them up with water to add weight. Apparently most of those versions are crappy plastic kinds. I frickin' swear to God I'm not making this up, but back in 2006 my ex-wife fell for the Nigerian prince scam and gave out our bank account number. A roommate of mine was dating this girl. Really cute, super sweet. We were all in the living room watching another roommate play Call of Duty World at War. It was still new at the time. She eventually asks if this was based on a true story. We reply that although the specific characters likely didn't exist, the game was based on World War II. Her response? "What's World War II? Are you serious? It was World War fricking II. At one point she even said, 'It's not like everyone knows about it.' Yeah, Katie, the whole world does know about it. It was a world war, and not the first one either, apparently." When he said the color orange didn't exist because it was really just pink and red mixed together. Was on a hike and was following a trail that I'd read up online. We got to a fork and I said, "Okay, now we need to go north." And she says, "Haven't we been going that way this whole time?" Confused, I look at her and ask why she says that. And she replies, "North is the direction in front of you, yeah?" I'm still not entirely sure about the origins of that logic. We were 16 at the time and we went to go and do the deed. I realized I didn't have any protection and then she told me she didn't need it because I trust my body not to get pregnant. I asked her what she was talking about and she told me it takes conscious effort to become pregnant, and if she didn't want to be, she'd never conceive.
How's she doing these days? 10 kids and living in a trailer?
In my defense, this story was back in 2004. I found it charming and endearing that this guy did funny voices, made funny idiosyncratic jokes, and occasionally called me Milady. Then I saw Anchorman. Oh my god. He was literally doing a 24/7 Ron Burgundy impression, eclipsing his entire personality. I'm not sure that I ever really met the real him. Ah, the old imitate a fictional character because you have no real personality of your own trick. 0% of the time, it works every time. Why do people keep going to knife point? It sounds like people keep getting held up there. When we got into a legit argument over how many years there are in a decade. Baby, if you're reading this, there are only 10 years in a decade, not 12. That the past was black and white. She was dead serious. My mum used to come up with weird, deep answers to questions like this, which confused 5-year-old me a whole lot. When we were watching some documentary film with 1930s footage, I asked her, why was the world all grey back then? Her answer? Because the world was covered with the smoke of war. My ex of 4 years, when she considered it not cheating to do the deed with a woman because there's no eggplant on her. Girl, it's still cheating. I knew someone in high school who told a story about how once she was really nervous about getting pregnant. She wasn't, but when she finished her story, the teacher asked if she checked for transmissibles. Her reply was, "Oh, I'm on the pill." A girl I dated for 5 years thought Al-Qaeda was a lone dude named Al, and I convinced the same girl that Whoopi Goldberg was married to Gerard Depardieu, as in her full name is Whoopi Doopy Doo. I told her a story about my childhood. 2 weeks later, she told it to me, but this time it was her childhood, apparently. She tried to argue that we could get to the moon easier if we just built a spaceship that could go underwater, and flew it through the ocean to the moon during the daytime rather than straight up.
My God, someone get NASA on the phone.
When she told me that babies could only happen if there was love, and the only way to get purgant from the unspeakable act was if you really loved the offender. He shot himself in the leg twice while cleaning his weapon. The same weapon, 2 weeks apart. First, he got himself in the calf, and then he took out his kneecap the second time. Same leg. Took months of surgeries to fix it. We were at a restaurant and she saw a picture of a buffalo and said, "I want to eat that pig." I was dying laughing. Probably one of the funniest people I've dated, but definitely wasn't too sharp. My ex thought that whenever I missed his call, the phone would still be ringing after it went to voicemail. I got at least 3 voicemails a week that consisted of silence and the odd, annoyed, impatient sigh. I showed my wife this thread and she reminded me that I used to think that yeast infections were a result of eating too much bread. Yeah. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. We were laying out under the stars and he asked why some were brighter and others dimmer. I told him that there were different sizes, brightnesses, and distances away. Confused silence. You mean they're not stuck up there? I'm lying there thinking that this can't be true. But oh, yes, it was. Upon further questioning, I found that he believed the night sky was a big dark blanket-like thing with stars stuck on it. The fact that our sun was a star also blew his mind, and just like our sun, other stars could have planets? Well, that was too much. I was crushed. I almost broke up with him there and then. But he was very earnest and wanted me to teach him, so I tried. 2 years and a whole lot of stupid later, we broke up. Okay, to expand. He worked with kids with special needs and did a really good job at that. He was well-meaning, pretty generally. He wanted to become the world's leading expert in autism. Fine, good for you. So I brought him along to my university library where he spent a day copying a textbook on autism line by line. I asked him how it was going and he said, "Great." Then he and I had a conversation where I told him that to be a world expert on it, it would take more than reading and copying books. It would involve research or being really involved in the field and gaining a formal education in it. After that one day in the library, he never went back. I didn't say he couldn't, he just lost interest. He did that a lot. He'd get super stoked on one subject, and the next day it would just be over. Forgotten. This happened with poker after he watched the movie Rounders. He lived with a bunch of guys. They all didn't like him, but he was completely oblivious to that fact. They asked me a lot why I was with him. Anyway, he set up a poker night immediately and then lost all of his money to him. He was already super poor, so he lost about $100, and I forbade him from getting loans to gamble more. Again, the next day, it was gone from his head. Same thing with free mountain climbing after we watched the Mission Impossible movie, where Tom Cruise scaled a rock face with no ropes. I told him he should try free skydiving instead. I was getting pretty sick of his crap by this point. He laughed and it was gone from his mind again. His big dream, and one that actually lasted the longest, was that he wanted to be a mortgage broker. His dad was one and was really successful. He just couldn't do the math though. He had to take a course and I tried to teach him the formulas, but he just couldn't do it. We were running through problems and then he turned to me with an exasperated look on his face. Why do the numbers keep changing? As in, why would the numbers change in a certain formula from one problem to another? This almost tied for the most stupid experience, the big blanket in the sky, but not knowing about space and the sun and general knowledge of how the Earth is situated in terms of our solar system just seemed a little more profoundly deficient to me. For all those asking, he did not have a sweet hog. He was not especially attractive. He was sweet and well-meaning sometimes, when he wanted to be, but he got more and more nasty and insecure as time went on. He controlled my every move by the end, and as I had low self-confidence, I felt like it was my fault, and that by being better, he would eventually treat me better. It did not work out that way. Things were going towards physical bullying, and I left. He stalked me a little bit afterwards. Through a natural move due to school, I took the opportunity to lay low, and he left me alone, thankfully. It ended 15 years ago, and since then I've married and am very happy with his polar opposite, an extremely intelligent man with a sweet hog. Well, I'm glad that you got away from dummy and eventually met your well-endowed smarty pants man, author. I don't know how you take steps to fix the mental issues with your ex better than you were already trying to do. Was there any hope for him? Ah, well. She thought Scotland was its own island, as in separated by water. We live 30 minutes from the border of Scotland. Okay, to answer some of your questions, we live on the east coast of England, and some guy thought it was from someone outside of Europe. We've both lived in England our entire lives, which makes this even more shameful. When she tried to convince me that the Pacific Ocean was freshwater. He insisted that women cannot be doctors, only nurses, and vice versa. He said that the two are the exact same thing except one is male and one is female. He was in his early 20s. When she told me she had never been to France, I knew for a fact she went to Disneyland Paris every year. Paris isn't in France, she insisted. We live in the UK, not USA, or somewhere else. You can literally drive onto a train which takes you to France from our country. She told me her most common password was very secure because it was just a bunch of random numbers. The fact that those same numbers were also her social security number didn't seem to concern her. We were texting back and forth, and she said she was obsessed with Bon Jovi. And she spelt obsessed like upset but with an S before the T. I realized it was a typo and asked why she was upset with Bon Jovi, and she said, "No, I love him. I'm obsessed with him." Watching a wildlife documentary, and my girlfriend asked me if bears laid eggs. We both live in the UK, and just this morning she messaged me asking if Theresa May was the Prime Minister. This was one of her more sensible questions, but really, she should know this. He thought the Nation of Islam was a place. When I explained to him that this was not the case, he responded with, agree to disagree. Oh wow, Halloween is on Friday the 13th this year. No, it's not. Is that an albino duck? That's a dove. When I told her that not every country celebrates 4th of July, or Thanksgiving. Luckily, she left me for a smackhead named Brad and told everyone that I finish quickly in the bedroom. When she thought that flashing red lights on the road, as in traffic lights blinking red, meant that you were entering a different time zone instead of indicating a stop sign. The backstory is that this was in Northwest Virginia. We were in college. I was doing my student teaching and had told some of the kids that I would go to the fall play. But I'd broken my right ankle, so she drove us. She dropped this knowledge on me on the way to the play. I was dumbfounded. Mine must be pretty dumb. I asked her out and she said yes. She was out for a run one day, and when she came back, she said an animal charged at her. So she cut her run short. I asked her what it looked like and she said, like a cow, but brown. It was a cow. Oh, that's a chocolate milk cow. The black and white cows turn all black when they're out of milk and slowly get white patches as they fill back up. When he told me, quite seriously, about how people with enough willpower can survive by photosynthesis. He called lingerie linguine, as in the pasta. I asked him about the class he was taking at community college. Oh, it's gonna be okay, better than last year. I failed it twice. Oh wow, must be a hard class. What's it about? Learning strategies. He failed a class about how to learn. Twice! He was getting his license renewed and they asked him if he wanted to be an organ donor. He said no way. When I asked why, he told me it was because he didn't want the government to come knocking for any of his organs when he still needed them. He really thought that becoming an organ donor meant that at any time, his organs could be taken. I mean, this man has seen the very serious and completely factual Monty Python documentary, The Meaning of Life, and taken one of its biggest lessons to heart. Bless. Driving down the road and the moon is visible during the day. She asks, how is the moon out at the same time as the sun? Sometimes that happens, it's not uncommon. No, they're the same thing, so how come I can see both at the same time? The sun and the moon are two different things. You're not serious, right? Yeah, not everyone went to college like you, schoolboy. You learned this in like the 2nd grade. This woman was in her early 30s. My girlfriend at the time genuinely believed that it was the Headless Horseman that ran through Lexington and Concord shouting, "The British are coming, the British are coming." Boyfriend took me to a fancy restaurant and we ordered wine. When the waiter came back, he gave my boyfriend the cork to sniff. My boyfriend grabbed it, sucked on it, and licked it like a lollipop, all excited while the waiter looked uncomfortable, poured our glasses, and slunk away. When she said her dad told her the giant wind farms in Central California were to cool things down, and she believed him. I asked, "This happened when you were a kid, right?"
No, last year.
While making Kool-Aid,
How much sugar does it need?
it should say on the package,
Just tell me.
1 cup.
Okay, well there's only 1/3 of a cup here. Where's the whole cup?
I don't know, just use the 1/3 cup then.
How many scoops do I do then?
It's 1/3 of a cup.
I don't know fractions, just tell me.
I'm not gonna tell you, figure it out, it's 1/3 of a cup. How many do you think it would be?
I don't know, Jonathan, just tell me.
3. That girl was 20 years old at the time, and I'll never forget that experience. When he joined the clan while dating me, I'm not white. He decided that he didn't want to go number 2 while staying with me in student halls, so he just didn't do it for 10 days and seriously messed up his digestive system. To clarify, I was living in student halls which were nothing more than bedrooms, bathrooms, and kitchens. It was a half-hour walk away from the university itself. His excuse was that he has anxiety about doing that in places he's not familiar with, or around a lot of people he didn't know at the time, as it was quite near the beginning of our relationship. She threw a butter knife at a light bulb in a crowded restaurant because she didn't like that it was flickering. What's the worst thing you've seen or heard in a game of truth or dare? I got dared to use a zip line that nobody had touched in decades. So we climbed up a mountain while wasted in the middle of the night and found that my friend was not bullcrapping and that it actually did exist. We used our zip on it and sailed over a 1,500-foot drop. And then the thought occurred to me that I had no way of getting back, and I had not even brought a flashlight with me and had absolutely no knowledge of the part of the mountain I was zipping to. So I basically stood in place for 7 hours or so. I don't know if that was the worst, but it was definitely the most stupid, considering that the whole point of the game was to get with some girls who were no longer in a partying mood after I disappeared into the night. When I was about 15 years old, my old high school soccer team had a co-ed spaghetti dinner that turned into a co-ed sleepover. Maybe about 6 guys and 5 girls. We ended up taking a bottle of really cheap Mr. Boston vodka from this kid's parents, and all of us began drinking much faster than 15-year-olds should. I was beginning to feel pretty nauseous, but was determined to stay in the game of truth or dare that we'd started. I was then dared to kiss the bare butt cheeks of one of the more crude chicks on the girls' team. As I pressed my lips to her cheek, she thought it would be hilarious to grab the back of my head and let rip right in my face. The heat and smell were too much for my stomach to bear, and as I pulled away, I blew chunks all over her back and butt. One of my mates said he had his Johnson pierced and nobody believed him, as he'd sometimes exaggerate or make up stories. To prove it, he put a straw through the piercing, and then another of my mates was dared to drink his drink through the straw. It was hilarious and weird, and both parties regretted it immediately. I was playing Truth or Dare with a few friends, my best friend and my best friend's wife. When they were married, they were both virgins by choice, from a traditional household. We're having fun and it comes to my turn, and I ask my best friend's wife, Truth or Dare, and she answers, Truth. My friend and I would always joke about our significant others despising the act of doing it in the butt and being disgusted by it. So I asked the joke, have you ever done it in the butt? She says, yes. Her husband turns bright red and says, no, we haven't, and the two leave shortly after. Turns out she was a traditional virgin, but had lost her, rear virginity back in high school. We didn't really talk after that. Ah, church values. You see, at that point, just doing the deed the usual way feels less sinful and dirty, to be honest. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it in the butt if you're into that. I just think that surely your divine being can't think that your workaround was any better than what you were trying to avoid. Same motions, same intent, same goal, for him at least, and just more number 2. Ugh. I'm a little late here, but my friend answered a truth and told everyone that he has 2 buttholes. Long story short, I've seen it, and that guy has 'em. And what I learned later from the internet is that there are many people with 2 buttholes. Color me surprised. Really drunk at a house party in high school. This hot girl named Jennifer took a truth. So the question was what her worst experience in bed had been. Suffice to say that the answer devolved into a cry fest about some legitimately traumatic stuff. After that, we didn't play the game very much anymore. When I was 17, I worked as a summer camp counselor. The week of our orientation, before the campers arrived, all the counselors were down by the lake and we started a game of truth or dare. Everyone was pretty normal except for this quiet girl that was a Disney freak. Everything Disney. Pajamas, sleeping bag, hair ties, t-shirts, all Disney, all the time. Being 17-year-olds in the woods, our truths and dares got pretty raunchy pretty quickly. After finishing my dare, I turned to her and asked, truth or dare? Truth was the reply. Okay. Have you ever done the deed? I asked. Yes, but only with one person. The answer then went a little too dark for YouTube. But suffice to say, we probably should have called the cops about what we heard. Game fricking over. For the people asking for a follow-up, many of the counselors and naturalists spoke with her that night and the next morning. Her father had been jailed a few years ago prior to her telling us. One dare was to bake cookies whilst in the buck, but then we were out of sugar, so a follow-up dare required a second person going to the neighbor's door in their underwear to ask for a cup of sugar. It worked and the cookies were delicious. The grad student neighbors didn't even bat an eye. In high school, a group of friends were playing truth or dare drunk after a party at my house. One of my friends had a crush on a girl and was trying hard to get with her. So when it was her turn to ask him, he suavely stated, dare. She told him to put one of the lights adorning the nearby Christmas tree into his wee-wee hole. He did, she was disgusted, and ended up loudly hooking up with another friend in an adjacent room, like soul-crushingly loud, while he stayed on the couch nursing his burnt meatus. 'Tis the season, I guess. One time I was dared to kiss this girl and I passed because I was in a long-going relationship with a girl I really love, of 3 years, so I did the following dare instead. I poured really hard rum onto my hand, lit it, and I had to keep it lit for as long as I could. Once it got too hot to handle, I had to put it out. Part of the dare was to put it out with the watermelon next to us. So I proceeded to punch it open with my flaming fist and stick my hand in it for 3 long, annoyingly sticky hours. I mean, you punched a hole in a watermelon with fire for love. That's amazingly badass. I was at a truth or dare party in college. Everyone pays $5 to get in and gets the same allotment of Monopoly money. You bet people to do things and accept bets, and whoever has the most at the end of the night gets to keep the door money. Greatest party ever. I just dared girls to make out with me all night, until I ran out of money, so I had to accept a couple of dares. Someone dared this other guy to eat a zebra cake off my butt, and dared me to drop trow and allow him to. So I figured, I'm not eating it, no big deal. It wasn't that terrible, but it did get my butt all sticky. I also felt like I couldn't really complain because of what the other guy had to do. At age 18, while at a friend's house digging around looking for a lighter, he finds an adult toy in his single dad's bedroom. It was one of those hot pink sparkly male member toys with the rabbit thing on it. Something that didn't really seem like a guy toy, and it was in the spare nightstand, so we assumed maybe an old girlfriend's or something. Fast forward a few weeks later, his dad was out of town and there were a few of us over playing truth or dare, and I dared him to do something with his dad's toy. At first, his face turned 10 shades of red, embarrassed in front of everyone else, but then he manned up, grabbed it with a Ziploc bag worn like a glove, and rubbed some sliced habanero peppers all over it. This was a Friday night and his dad was supposed to be back Saturday. Saturday night rolls around and he and our other friend and myself are all in his house quietly as we had been drinking and had snuck in. This was about 8 p.m.-ish. As the other friend and I stood in the driveway, we heard the most god-awful, blood-curdling scream. The kind of scream that sounds like someone is being murdered. We dashed in just in time to meet our friend in the hallway as he sprinted into his dad's room. His mum, as in his father's ex-wife, is on the floor butt naked, curled up in a ball screaming her head off. Apparently, his mum and dad had been screwing around behind the family's back. A hospital trip followed, and after spending the night in the ER, not knowing what the frick happened, they ended up coming out in the open, getting back together and then remarried. That was 12 years ago and they're still together. For their wedding present, I gave them a jar of habaneros that they still don't understand to this day. Thank you, Ryan. If you're ever out there, your mum's burning bush has become mildly famous on Reddit and YouTube. I never knew the internet liked a good, fiery love story.
Your friend's cruel actions brought his parents back together. That's absolutely amazing.
Parent Trap 2, Habanero Boogaloo. Well, all's well that ends well, I suppose. My God, I cannot imagine getting a high Scoville score pepper on one's private parts. I've repeatedly done it to my eyes before, but never downstairs. I do not envy your mother. A girl at a party I once went to got dared to sit on a small lava lamp. As in, sit on it, if you get what I mean. Anyway, this thing was on and hot. The poor girl sat for 2 seconds and jumped right back up. Turned out she gave herself burns on the inside of her lady parts. My friends and I dared a kid to snort a bit of very, very hot sauce. He snorted it like a champ and then spent the rest of the night with blood pouring from his face. 7th grade. What were we thinking? It wasn't really a dare, but a drunken friend said he'd show us how much of a man he was. In quick succession, he chugged about 250 mils of Jack Daniels, snorted a line of salt and then poured vinegar into one eye and squeezed a lemon in the other. Everyone laughed at him because he had to run to the bathroom crying to wash his eyes. I saw a prolapsed butthole as proof for a truth that no one would believe. It was not a pretty flower. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It's not that bad comparatively, but it was still unpleasant. In 4th grade, we played Truth or Dare at my birthday party. It was all guys, which made it kinda weird. One friend dared another friend to get into the buck, which was really weird. So my pal begins a striptease as we all beg him to stop. He got down to his stained briefs. This guy didn't let his wee-wee drain all the way, I guess, and was just beginning to lower them when we heard a scream. My 7-year-old sister had just walked into the room to see a scrawny, self-proclaimed street-rapping gangster/meteorologist busting out his hog. He dove into his sleeping bag and didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the night. We decided video games were a lot more fun and immediately ended the game. My friend denied anything had ever happened the next day. This guy was obsessed with weather in elementary school, all he ever talked about. He was a white kid who moved to our very white city from a very diverse, low-income city, so he talked like a thug while going on about cold fronts. He did end up becoming a meteorologist though, so hey, good for him. I got really drunk in a game with some workmates, and I had to pull out my ball bag and touch it against another guy's. Probably pretty tame compared to the rest of this video though. Went to an adult-themed elf party once for Christmas. Good mix of a crowd until we all got absolutely off our heads. Some guy got dared to be blindfolded and have a down-under kiss from some random girl. A guy at the party who'd always denied being gay decided it would be funny for him to do this particular act. That's how my friends Tom and Chad met and later got married. We were on our way to Hershey's Park for the 8th grade class trip. All the cool kids sat in the back of the bus. Somehow I got a seat back there too. It began as a silly middle school game of Truth or Dare, until this girl was dared to go south of the border on some guy for 2 minutes, and then a few turns later, she was dared to do it again to a different guy. I was an innocent cream puff Casper milquetoast, having never seen anything like this outside of my computer, and I was in shock. Not super risque, but it gave her the funniest nickname for the next 4 years in high school. Doubleheader. An entire room of girls had to rub A535 gel on their hoo-has. There was silence and then screams. I watched my friend take a crap in the park, and then we threw rocks at it. I miss being a teenager. One of the popular girls in my high school admitted to regularly making brown in her hand. She took truth and was asked to tell an embarrassing secret or something like that. She said that she was always embarrassed whenever there was a splashing sound in the toilet when she went number 2, so she'd always do it in her hand and then slide it quietly into the water. She went from being a popular girl to being the brown-handed girl pretty quick. A friend of mine back in high school was asked where the weirdest place he'd ever tickled his pickle was. His answer was a train, which, it's pretty weird, but we did ask. And then, for whatever reason, he didn't stop talking there and he told us where he put the mess afterwards when the train staff came through. He fricking ate it. Again, he just told us that last part without anyone even asking. Oh, and there it is. There is the winner of the Gagging Narrator Award. I mean, I'm thankful you didn't just wipe it out on the upholstery, but my god, next time can you just not do that particular deed at all, so there's no need for any grisly choice like that to be made? Oh. Okay, so this is a long story, but I promise the payoff is there. First college party. Commence after party truth or dare with about 8 people. 3 a.m. rolls around and we're down to 6 people, but things start getting a little raunchy. A kiss here, a flash there, take off an article of clothing, all in good fun. 3:30 rolls around and damn, I still remember the time. This really cute girl who I was crushing on since high school asked me and I answered truth, because by this time I was down to my boxers, and I didn't really feel like sitting with my eggplant out. Anyway, she asks me some stupid question, I forget what it was exactly, along the lines of what's the craziest place you've done the deed. I was a virgin at the time, so my answer naturally was a lie. However, it was a boring one. I said the living room at my parents' house. Everyone started booing me, saying that the answer wasn't worth a turn, and told the girl to go again. I got really embarrassed because not only was it a giant lie, but a giant lie that was apparently too prudish. For some reason, let's call it booze and green herb, I agreed to go again. Inside, I was having a panic attack and wanted to cry. Yes, men have feelings too. So to avoid a repeat of that question, I went with dare. Screw it, I thought. I'm decently hung, so I'd rather have it out than have people find out that I'd never put it in anything. I was 18. In my defense, losing your virginity was everything back then. So she dares me to go south of the border on her. This is literally every guy's dream, right? The girl you want more than anything but thought you couldn't have just asks you to give her a down-under kiss. So I obliged, whole fricking heartedly. And it went all downhill from there, folks. As soon as it sunk in what she'd asked for, things got real stiff down there. And I was wearing those peekaboo boxers, so guess who showed his face without me noticing? And guess whose face began drooling? So yeah, pre-splooge is a real thing, is something I learned that night. So here I am sitting across from the hottest girl who's ever asked me to just do some stuff with her, with my Mr. out, oozing, throbbing, and leaking all over my boxers, surrounded by 3 other girls and another guy as well as some random party stragglers who are just watching this all unfold. It gets pretty bad. I notice what's going on, but I don't think much of it because she's already taken her undies off. So all she does is hike up her skirt and spread them wide. Holy crap, I'd never done this before. The most I'd ever done with a girl was a kiss at that point. I should preface this by saying I get all gassy when I'm nervous. Some of you may know where this is going, but I guarantee you fricking don't. So now she's lying like this on the floor and I need to make a move, so I do what any girl-loving guy would do in the most awkward way possible. I shifted down to all fours and crawled toward her like a frickin' tiger or something. I put my face in the correct area, but my hands aren't touching her or anything. Instead, I'm on all fours like I'm a puppy sniffing at her. After a few seconds, the position gets horribly uncomfortable and I shift my weight in such a way that my butt is now sticking up and my knees are underneath my body. What happens next is the single worst 30 seconds of my life, followed by years of shame. She begins moaning and tells me to take off my boxers. I quickly oblige, but I can only get them half off in this position without stopping what I'm doing. So I'm now mooning 3 chicks and a guy that are sitting behind me, with my hairy crevice perfectly on display about 2 feet from their faces. The woman that I'm doing this to starts moaning more and saying she's about to get there. Anxiety gets the better of me and I get super nervous. Did I mention I get gassy when I'm nervous? And did I mention that alcohol also gives me horrible indigestion? The more things heat up, the more I'm now focusing on what's about to be the biggest toot of my life. She begins to go into her state of euphoria, and I can feel it from her downstairs and her other muscles tensing up. I get so excited but simultaneously relieved that I can stop and excuse myself to go to the bathroom and let one out. Except I got relieved too soon. The blast was explosive, but the real problem was that I hadn't done number 2 all day. So the net result was this girl moaning, screaming, and having the time of her life while I was simultaneously taking a projectile crap on 4 people behind me. The smell. Oh god, the smell. I didn't want to turn around, but I had to before the other girl was even done with arriving. They were freaking coated. One of the girls got it worse than everyone else. Her face looked like it was dipped in a bucket of Nutella. Chunky, watery Nutella. The guy got it bad too, and they all got it in their hair, their mouths. Oh God. So now this was all happening in several seconds. So when the girl finally opens her eyes, all she sees is my gaping butthole with bits of number 2 sticking out of it. I turn around to look at the damage, and me on all fours, and the other people soaked in it, starting to scream. She screamed, I screamed, and the guy began hitting me, covering me in my own number 2 that was falling off his face and neck, except several seconds after he started hitting me, he began blowing chunks. His hands slipped on the upchuck and he collapsed on top of me. 2 undressed guys on top of each other, coated in splooge, chunks, and explosive number 2, surrounded by hot chicks, most of whom are also covered in number 2. In short, the story has haunted me for 5 years. Epilogue, I actually dated this girl for 2 years afterwards, and the chick who got coated in my crap the worst is now my best friend. The guy I actually never saw again. He left that night. I saw the other 2 girls from time to time, but we never made eye contact. For some reason, people started calling me Butt Candy at parties after that. The nickname stuck around at parties until I moved cities a year ago. Up until now, the narrator has never had a story that he couldn't finish without laughing, so well done to that author. Whether your tale is real or fictional, I salute you. My God. What did you do at work that made you realize, well, I'm getting fired, aren't I? I worked for a small computer company, doing a couple of million a year in sales. One of my tasks was to update price listings and have those changes reflect on our vendors' websites. I put one less zero on one computer model and ended up costing our company $30,000 in about 1 day. Someone had noticed the error and bought a crap ton of computers. Even though there was a Q&A process to catch these things after me, I knew that I was getting fired. In short, I got fired. I should say that my boss was actually pretty cool about it, but they had to put the blame on someone. He told me I could still use them as a reference and that I could label the position as a short-term contract. I'm a police dispatcher, and one time at work I was working the desk and Toys for Tots workers came in. My boss joked that I should ID them to make sure they weren't thieves. We laughed and the gentleman took the 10 trash bags full of toys and left. Later that night, a man called and asked when he could pick up the toys. After telling him that 2 guys already picked the toys up, he confirmed to me that we had most likely been robbed. He asked if I'd ID'd them, and I said no. He spoke to my boss, and my boss then informed me that we would probably be on the news since a police station was robbed, which was ironic, and he flipped out on me. It turns out it was actually an off-duty cop calling to play a prank on me. I worked at an automotive parts manufacturing factory while going to art college, and part of my job was boxing up parts and attaching a tag onto the box with thin wire. But for every box I completed, one every couple of hours, I sculpted a little animal out of the wire with needle nose pliers. I gave the little sculptures, bears, rabbits, whatever, to random employees, which they left on their workstation. One day, as I was making one of the little sculptures, I looked over my right shoulder to see my supervisor standing directly behind me, just watching me with a clipboard. I paused, looked her dead in the eye, held out the sculpture, and said, "Want a bear?" She fired me on the spot. I'm now an animator at Disney. I hope that before asking your fateful question, you maintained eye contact with your supervisor for at least 5 seconds, with an equal amount of time after your question and before she said, "You're fired." Because that takes this from funny to like NBC comedy script level. Good job on moving up and creating different, more complicated bears for the silver screen. I was a legal secretary. My boss was excited about our new big money case with a new big money client. We'll call them Plaintiff Smith. Boss had 3 attorneys write a 6-page letter to our client outlining exactly how we're going to cream Defendant Jones. The letter included possible counterattacks and legal citations and basically our entire strategy. Meanwhile, I was poring over documents we had received regarding Defendant Jones. I was asked to mail the strategy letter to our client, Plaintiff Smith. No biggie, just put it in an envelope, right? I knew he lived out on Maple Drive, So I pulled his address from some papers on my desk and I mailed that sucker out. Next day, I'm poring over those Defendant Jones documents again, and my blood ran cold. No one had told me that Jones and Smith were next-door neighbors. The address I'd pulled was Jones's. I'd mailed our entire strategy to the opposing side. I immediately called their local post office and used my lunch break to drive there for the next 2 days. People at my office knew my mistake. I think I wasn't fired immediately because there was some chance I might fix it. Everyone avoided me or gave me tight-lipped smiles. Miraculously, the postmaster finally located the letter. The carrier had it in her bag on the 3rd day and brought it back to the post office where I was waiting. I gave the postmaster a $25 gift card and my tearful gratitude. My boss, who'd avoided me, finally broke the silence and said, "I cannot believe you fricking found that letter." It became a crazy story around the office, and I was not fired. I worked at a movie theater in high school. I'm blind in one eye and used to be sensitive about it. I got into an argument with a coworker at the theater, but didn't really think anything of it. Later on, I was going down the hall to get more ice and passed him as he was tearing tickets for customers. He muttered, "Cyclops," as I passed, just loud enough for me to hear. So I immediately turned around and punched him in the face in front of his line of customers. I never saw managers run so fast. Hey, you know those little toys for kids? The little pieces where you shoot off bits of potato? Well, I had the bright idea to shoot off a potato shooter in the parking lot of my company. I fired a few rounds across the road when the maintenance manager came running out, screaming at me. I then realized I was firing a weapon on company property. It doesn't matter that it's potatoes and right guard, it's still a projectile. My fellow supervisors who were watching all disappeared. I went back to my desk to await my manager. All I got was a "I trust this will not happen again" email. I still work for the company and it occasionally gets brought up on my work anniversary. I was working at Cozy, a sandwich, soup and salad place, and had asked to leave early the previous day since my uncle had died. I went back to work and was still in a state of shock and I couldn't check my baggage at the door. I had this horrible lady change her order 4 times during the lunch rush when I had a line out the door. I couldn't take it anymore and told her to either order or get the frick out of my line. My manager heard me. Before he could say anything, I took my apron and hat off, handed it to him and grabbed my stuff and left. I use ADIOM to manage my instant messages while I'm at work. I'm a developer. I was speaking to a project manager at a new job. I'd been there for maybe a month. She was asking me to do some tedious work that was completely unnecessary because they promised it to a client. While frustrated, I tabbed over to my girlfriend's IM to complain about how frustrated I was that they were making us do all this work for basically nothing. Unfortunately, I didn't tab over, and I sent the IM to the project manager. My heart sunk into my stomach. I saw the little icon that showed she was typing and was like, "Oh crap, how do I cover this up before she responds?" I reread the comment and noticed I used a lot of pronouns, so when she responded, she thought I was talking to her about the client. Dear Lord, I thought I'd ruined my awesome new job right after it started. In high school, I worked at an AM radio station in my small town on Sunday mornings. I was the only person there from 6 a.m. to noon. It was mostly reading the weather and playing pre-taped programs. At one point, I play a live broadcast of a Catholic mass going on. During that time, I would crawl into a ball in the break room and doze off, hungover from the night before. One Sunday, I woke up to, "God damn it, Tim, you can't sleep on the job!" And I sit up and see the boss who runs the station standing over me with a frown. "But I wasn't sleeping," I say. Just when I think he might buy it, he says, "You have an alarm clock next to you." Yeah, I brought an alarm clock that I'd set so I didn't oversleep. Hard to explain that one. I thought I was screwed, but somehow he didn't fire me. I worked there for another month and then I left for college. I work in a furniture store, mainly in the warehouse. We sell expensive crap. Like the cheapest lamp you'll find is $100, and that's because it's damaged slightly. We'd received a shipment of a very expensive set, all for a model home that we were staging. I had a china cabinet, still boxed, on our forklift. It was set on a pallet upright on its side, so that was very tall and not very wide. I was bringing it into the warehouse and being super careful. Well, we have a sunken manhole right in front of the warehouse garage floor. The front right wheel of the forklift went right into the dip, and I watched that 350-pound box of wood and glass teeter, rock, and fall flat on the ground. It made a solid thunk, and I knew it was all over. It turned out to not have a sad ending. The lady in charge of damages knew it was an accident and ordered a new one right away, no worries or anything. But when we received the new piece, my manager wouldn't let me near it. Look, I know that you knew about the danger of the manhole and all, but surely it's mostly on your boss for knowing that this problem was an ongoing thing and not taking steps to fix it, because they sure as all heck would have had trouble firing you for that kind of incident. I'm a medical equipment repair technician. One night I was working on an exam light that was hanging from the ceiling in an operating room. I had a bit of it apart and was inspecting the connection between the big light head and the arm that it was suspended from when a clip popped out. The light head dropped to the floor. The arm is spring-loaded and it shot up and shattered the ceiling and 5 or 6 lights, showering the operating table, anesthesia cart, and myself in ceiling tile, plastic, and glass. At first, I was in shock, and what just happened didn't register in my brain. I reached down to pick up the light's head, which is about 3 inches across, and grabbed the arm with my other hand. While trying to put them back together, I realized I'm coating everything in blood. The operations staff came running in and just saw me surrounded by destruction and covered in my own blood. Fortunately, the charge nurse had a sense of humor. I worked at a ticket booth for a water park in high school as a summer job. It was 2010, and so a lot of the people I was working with were adults with families and whatnot, but we were all very close because it's retail, and thus gives you all a common enemy. Anyway, with school starting back up again, I'd put in my 2 weeks' notice. It was a summer job, so I actually had to give my end date on the first day, but we still had to submit a notice. Our company was extremely paranoid about cash. We didn't have any money or cards on us at any time while working, and you couldn't leave your work area at all once you were given money unless you checked your till back in to your supervisor, including every bathroom break. There were cameras all over the booth, and you had to explicitly count any money on the table, separated, so that it would show up on camera. All money was counted randomly throughout your shift twice a day and then again at the end. If you had a variance of over $20, it was considered a Class 3 violation and you were immediately fired. Tickets for the water park were about $60 a person, so one screw-up was essentially all you got in ticketing. Anyway, a woman I was working with, probably about 45, was checking her till in at the same time as me. We talked a lot during downtime. I knew she had 3 kids and was recently divorced. She kept full custody of the kids, but she was essentially a housewife before that. Her husband was very well off, and though with some nice support payments she could keep afloat, she had to take the job to be able to give her kids nice things. She was frustrated at her husband always getting to be the hero who would come in to take them on vacation and didn't have to discipline them and who had the money to buy them new game systems and the clothes that her daughter wanted and whatnot. She was stressed and low on sleep all the time. She was working other jobs too. Anyway, we were tilling out and then I realized she's taking a long time. We put our money through a scanner and there's only one, so I was waiting for her to finish. And I realized she's running everything through multiple times. So I ask what's going on. And I realize her eyes are getting really watery and she whispers that she's off by $36. Now, we really can't make a fuss because while the cameras don't do audio, there are still supervisors around. So I, in a split-second decision, shuffled some paperwork around and slipped the money to her till and told her to just try again. I figured that I was signing off my own death certificate. I got fired on the spot when they checked me out after. They took my gate keys and my ID card. A security officer was called and he escorted me to the break room to get my stuff, and then to my car, where they took my parking pass and drove behind me in their golf cart until I was out of the gates. I wasn't allowed to see anyone or say goodbye, so there was no real closure with me and that woman. She did call me a couple of days later to say thank you and how much it meant and whatnot, and invited me over for dinner with her family. But I was getting ready to go back to school for a couple of days and said no thanks. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Worked at Taco Bell. As a background, people generally consider me very mild-tempered and kind. One night was particularly stressful. It wasn't unusual for us to kind of beat on the touchscreens a bit, but I got mad and I punched one. Mind you, it wasn't a full-blown oh my god punch, it was more like if your buddy made fun of you and you kind of annoyingly punched his shoulder. The screen shattered and then the touchscreen started ringing up hundreds of, coincidentally, fruit punches. The girl working next to me saw the screen shatter and saw my hand bleeding and looked at me like she thought I'd just started a rampage and was about to go after her. I got fired 3 times that night. Each manager, the store, the district, and regional, fired me, yelled at me, then calmed down, and said that since I'd been a good worker, they'd let me stay if I paid for it. I paid for it. It took a couple of paychecks to replace the touchscreen computer in 2002. I was working for a faith-based radio station. I was supposed to hook up the ISDN for a live broadcast. I shut my eyes, just for a minute, and woke up half an hour into the hour-long broadcast. I got the ISDN to connect, but no audio was playing. I yelled some things like, "Eggplant sucker, goddammit," and then I figured out that the ISDN was hooked up to an A-B switch. The B side was the microphone in front of my face. A couple of old ladies called in after the broadcast saying, "I didn't hear the church for a half hour, and then I heard a man's voice. I think it was you. And then it came on." "Oh, don't worry, ma'am. It won't be a problem going forward, I assure you." I told them I'd switched my medication and passed out. Which is sort of true. That and I was up all night drinking in a faraway town and didn't get any sleep the night before. I left a voicemail for my boss and never went back or worked in a radio again. It just wasn't for me. In short, I said wang sucker on live Christian radio working as an engineer. I quit and I regret nothing. Honestly, the narrator doesn't think they would have fired you, or at least they shouldn't have. Given that you hear about male pastors getting away with mega scandals, what's an accidental exclamation of member sucking between friends? But in all seriousness, I don't think they would have. Depending on the faith, these people can actually be quite forgiving. Threw a staple gun onto the counter. It bounced up and smashed a hole through the monitor at my workstation. I was fired the next day. I was young and I had just got my full-time job at an awesome company. It was a small .com startup, and those of us in customer support, which was about 5 people, had a running gag with the NOC team, which was about 5 people. We called them the NOC bastards, and they called us pool boys, even though I was the first female on the customer support team. On a dare from my supervisor, Reed, not my real manager, I went into the company's alias list and set up nocbastards@company.com to go to the NOC alias, and poolboys@company.com to go to us. The system admin saw the file change and he saw who changed it. Third day of work, I got a stern talking to. I went white as I saw my dream job slipping away. He saw how freaked out I was getting and said, "Calm down, you're not going to get fired for this or anything," before proceeding to go further. He then called in my supervisor and gave him a real stern talking to as well. I ended up becoming friends with that system admin and spent 6 wild years at that company. Oh, my dad has a great one. He was a busboy at a restaurant and it was his first day on the job. The place was packed and he was rushing back with a ton of dishes. Somehow the tray to carry them fell and all of the dishes fell to the floor with a loud crash. Everyone looked over at my dad. My dad saw that there was one lone dish intact, picked it up, held it out at arm's length, then dropped it. It broke. Everyone in the restaurant applauded and he was then fired. I was once chatting with a higher-up manager about how a lot of people were away on the holidays. She said she might leave early, but I was stuck pulling a couple of extra hours with all of the people out getting their stuff handled. As she was walking away, what I wanted to say was, "Yep, don't want to have anyone working harder at their job than they have to this time of year," or something like that. But what came out of my mouth was, "Yep, don't want to have to make you do your job." She was already around the corner by the time I got that far, so my brain made me stop talking. Then I realized what I'd just said. But it was too late, she was already gone. I heard about it quite a bit from my direct superior later, but nothing came of it. I worked phone technical support in the late 90s. We had an instant messenger program, but weren't supposed to use it. Only the managers contacted you on that. So a manager starts a large group conversation on a Friday, then immediately drops off. We continue chatting and having fun for a few minutes, but most of us drop out. About 10 of us kept going. After some time, someone invites a few of our Canadian counterparts to the conversation. We're joking back and forth about who has the better beer, how their weather is sunny, ours was rainy that day, among other things. In the spirit of fun, I post the lyrics to the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaxman song from Ren and Stimpy. It seems to be no big deal, conversation dies out within about 15 minutes and we eventually turn it off. I then get a dreaded manager instant message asking my name and group manager. Uh-oh. Within a few minutes, I'm called in by my manager and he takes me to another manager who runs the Canadian group. I was reported as making offensive and harassing comments. My manager asks me very solemnly, "What did you say?" I know I'm so fired at this point, so I just say, I quoted the lyrics to the Ren and Stimpy Royal Canadian Kilted Yaxman song. He snorts and almost does a spit take laughing, and then quickly recovers and says, "Okay, don't do it again. Instant Messenger is only to be used for work purposes." The other manager just kind of rolls her eyes, tells me the Canadian team doesn't have a sense of humor, and reiterates not doing it again. And that was it. I got away with a slap on the wrist. I just started work in the field as a natural gas technician. I'm normally a model employee at every job I have, but this one started off a little shaky. My first day, while making a K-turn, I backed the company truck into a ditch and bottomed it out. My bosses had to drive out 45 minutes from the office to pull me out. They were obviously annoyed, but for some reason, they decided to keep me aboard. Strike one. The second day at my last house of the day, I managed to lock my keys in the truck. On-duty boss had to leave home, drive all the way to the office and get the spare keys and come unlock my door. Strike two. Third day, no incident. Fourth day, at my first house of the day, while bleeding the gas line inside the house, the gas ignites. Totally burns out the AC unit. This is it. I'm fired. There's no way I keep my job after this. Boss comes to the house, looks at it, looks at me and said, "Man, you screwed up." The next day I was told to stay home. And thus concluded the worst first week on the job I've ever heard of. The best part? Somehow I didn't lose my job, but instead went on to be the best tech they had. I worked there for over a year before moving on to do better things. I worked as a media buyer, and on my third day on the job, my boss asked me to find some information and update the huge spreadsheet he was working on for the client's annual plan. As I was about to update it, he opened the file to finish a few things and asked me to wait. Now, I'm the new girl wanting to show service. I decide to open a copy of the spreadsheet and update it there, so when he finishes, I know where it goes. He finishes, lets me know I can open the file. I just save the one that I've updated on top of his work. I basically made him lose an entire day of work. The year-round spreadsheet was ready, and the one I had was a rough draw. I really thought he was going to throw his monitor on my head. He changed colors and had to leave the office in order not to curse me out. I apologized the next day, and so did he, and we agreed to always save versions from that day forward. Firefighters. What ways have you seen idiots literally make their lives go up in flames? In the city of Colorado Springs, the local news did a fluff piece about candle safety near Christmas. After they were done filming, the owner of the store that they were filming in took the crew out to breakfast. She didn't put out the candles and burned several shops to the ground. The film crew was there to film her breakdown when they realized what had caused the fire. I worked for a restoration company. A family cut a small tree down and tried to stuff it up their fireplace to burn it. The flute was so crammed with leaves that smoke started to fill the living room. They tried to pull the tree out, and that's when it really caught fire. They tried to pull it out of the house and they got as far as the front door. All of them had second and third degree burns on their hands and arms, and the fire destroyed the front room and entryway of their house. The insurance company asked us if we thought it was a case of fraud, and we told them, "No, these people are just really stupid." A fairly common one, but the response was interesting. Early February, Western Pennsylvania. A guy's pipes freeze on the coldest day of the year, -8 degrees Fahrenheit. He tries to thaw them out with a propane torch, and sets the wall on fire, tries to put the fire out, and fails. Finally calls 911. Fire chief is half a block away and is on scene in under a minute. The basement is fully involved, main floor catching. The first engine arrives in under 5 minutes. Doors are blocked by fire, exterior attack only. I was on the attack line, spraying water into the second floor window. After 40 minutes, another firefighter comes to relieve me, but since I'd been getting back spray, I was frozen to the ground. He has to pull me loose. 2 hours later, we've knocked it down. The insurance adjuster shows up. The assistant chief explains what started the fire. The adjuster replies, "Yeah, we know. It's okay. We insure for stupid." Nobody got hurt, by the way. Family got a much nicer house out of the deal as well. A teenager was charcoal grilling in the attached garage during the winter. When he was done, he decided the best place to dispose of the hot coals was into a cardboard box in front of the corner of the garage closest to the house. Yeah, it went about as well as you can imagine. I don't understand what they mean by that last sentence. Paper and its relatives are famously fireproof. That's why we make all of our important documents out of it, surely. And it's also why the narrator has a trail of single-ply toilet paper circled around his fireplace and leading into the bedroom of his firstborn child. My dad was a firefighter. He once went to a house fire that was started by the old lady who lived there. She liked to burn candles, but didn't like the wax buildup that would form in the cavity, so she would soak up the liquid wax with a napkin. She was doing this when she accidentally brushed a wax-soaked napkin up against the flame. She panicked and threw the napkin into the trash, where all the other wax napkins were. As the trash can exploded into flames, she fled the house, but not before she went to her oxygen tanks and flooded the house with pure oxygen because she thought that it would smother the fire. Not a house fire, but really good. Late 1980s. Guy was driving an old beat-up Lincoln. He turned a corner to go up a steep hill, but the road department had recently ground the asphalt down in preparation to repave. A storm sewer manhole cover was sticking up about 4 inches. As he went over it and up the hill, the rear of his car dragged due to the pavement height difference, and the manhole ripped open his fuel tank and sparked off the gas. He described it as, "I heard a scraping sound, looked in the mirror, and there was a trail of fire chasing me up the hill like I was the roadrunner." He pulled into a gravel parking lot and tried to kick a brake in the trail before the fire got there, but it jumped the gap and hit the car. By the time we got there, it was up in flames. He actually thought it was kind of funny. The only real loss was his wife's purse with her license and credit cards. The car was insured and they got a nice payout for it. I am a firefighter, but this wasn't in my district. A guy was attempting to forge a sword in a burning barrel in an alley, based on something he'd watched on the History Channel. The embers from the, quote, forge lit up the building he lived in and destroyed 3 multi-story family residential buildings. This happened in the past fall. A family had a fairy house that was outside, right next to their wooden-sided house. The fairy house was made out of an old tree and had a bunch of decorations in it, including incense candles. One evening, they decided that they'd light the candles for the fairy, which then caught the tree on fire, which then extended into the house. Since it started on the outside, it ran up the side of the house first and got into the attic and second floor. The family was home, but in the first floor while this was happening. It wasn't until someone driving on the road saw the smoke and went to alert the family that they realized. Luckily, we were able to save the structure. There was a bit of damage to the roof, attic, and second floor, but the homeowners are rebuilding those areas now. In college, a girl in the dorms was making popcorn, which, not sure, but somehow caught fire in the microwave. She didn't want to get into trouble for it, so she grabbed the flaming bag of popcorn and threw it into the nearby trash can, then proceeded to cover the fire with paper towels to, quote, smother it. She actually thought it would work. It did not work. I came back exhausted after work to find the dorm building surrounded by fire trucks. Based on the stories of relatives, the answer is by allowing 10 years worth of dryer lint to accumulate inside the machine until it just bursts into flames. This was not an isolated case. Forgetting to close the bottom of your grill and then going overboard with lighter fluid. Oh yeah, a friend of mine in the 5th grade caught himself on fire with lighter fluid when the charcoal wasn't really starting. They used to sell extension arms that you could hook the lighter fluid can to, and he used one of those. But the fire ran up the dripping fluid into the can. No problem, he just walked over and set it down and released the holder, at which point the can tipped over. It was only about a quarter full, so only a little spilled out, but he went to tip it back up when it exploded right when his head was above it, and the burning lighter fluid covered his head. He was pretty smart for an 11-year-old. He remembered where the fire extinguisher was, ran over, pulled the pin, sprayed himself, but he still had bad burns all over his face and head. College students really are something else, man. My school is a nursing and engineering school full of the people that will be staffing hospitals and designing the technology of tomorrow. I cannot tell you how many times I was woken in the middle of the night because one of these beacons of the future took way too much green herb and put a burrito in the microwave with the foil still on it. I mean, we had numerous people forget to add water to the instant noodle cup, but leaving the foil wrap on something is probably way worse. Oh, that awkward period between leaving high school and becoming real adults with jobs. We learn a lot of important lessons during our years in college, like what not to do in the kitchen, so that when you inevitably move into your own flat, you don't burn it down around you. Not everyone learns it early enough, I guess. It was in my local paper. It turned out to be my friend's older brother. He tried to smoke out bees in the loft and set fire to the insulation in there, and burnt the whole house down. My father was a Boston firefighter for more than 30 years. One of his more memorable stories was a foreign family who'd ripped up their cast iron bathtub and built an open flame underneath it. They used the tub as a giant oil fryer. Naturally, this didn't work out very well and the house caught fire. To add to the insanity even more, the family absolutely refused to let my dad and his co-workers in without taking their boots off, which of course they couldn't agree to. Just crazy. I was a chef before I was on a volunteer fire department for a bit, and this was at a restaurant down the street from my old one. Cooks at this restaurant forgot to plug the drain in the deep fryer. So what happened was they put oil in a fryer which drained immediately right before lunch, turned on said fryer, and that's when the coils caught fire. So not only did they spill 5 gallons of oil, burn a fryer, fill a restaurant with smoke, and kill the service day, this was the second time it had happened. My uncle is a firefighter, and the answer is Christmas trees. If they dry out, they become a ticking time bomb. He used to do an annual demonstration where he'd let a Christmas tree dry out for a few months, and then he'd take it outside and ignite it. The flames would shoot 40 feet in the air and the tree would be gone in a few seconds. It was mightily impressive to behold, and I'm sticking with artificial trees. Firefighter here. One extremely cold night, the temperature was -11, with wind chills in the -40s. This guy tries starting a fire in his fireplace and couldn't get it started. He decides to use gasoline. He dumps half a gallon on the firewood stacked by the door and the other half onto the wood in the fireplace. As he attempted to light the fire, he couldn't get the lighter to work. Now the vapors are really starting to build up. He then goes to the kitchen, which adjoins the room with the fireplace, to use the stove to light some newspaper. As soon as he turned the knob on the stove, the igniter lit the gasoline vapors. The living room was instantly on fire. The vapors singed all his hair and he got first-degree burns on his hands and face. We, on the other hand, spent the next few hours in the extreme cold. Flash ahead 3 hours, now the firewood outside has somehow ignited and we have to go back. The second fire had some time to really grow. In the middle of the night, everyone was in bed with no one around. The longest, coldest night of all my life, all because some fool decided to use gasoline to start a fire indoors. I set my parents' bathroom on fire while getting up from the toilet. My mum used to leave potpourri simmering in a small bowl on the back of the toilet with a candle to heat and stew it just below. As I was getting up, I somehow knocked the apparatus off the back of the commode. We had carpet floors in that bathroom, and that section of the floor caught pretty quickly. The fire then found a seam in the wallpaper and ignited the glue fairly easily as well. As the flames rose, it caught the roll of toilet paper on the way up the wall, which really accelerated things. All of this took less than 30 seconds, and I remember being somewhat mesmerized at the path the flames traveled. I also remembered that I'd flushed the toilet before realizing what had happened. I somehow thought to grab the toilet bowl brush, shove it into the commode to get it wet, and then beat out the flames. The aftermath was surprisingly minimal. The small section of carpet was destroyed, but my parents replaced the carpet everywhere a few years later. The wallpaper wiped clean with some hot water and a rag, and thankfully there was only a little permanent smoke damage on the ceiling, which has seemed to fade over time. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Mid-80s, near the beginning of my career. A young lady finished putting flea spray on her pupper when she noticed a tick embedded in its flank. You ever hear of the tick removal technique in which you blow out a match and touch the hot tip to the tick, thereby causing it to back out of the dog? Yeah, the dog caught fire. The little fellow ran under the bed, which also caught fire. The lady grabbed the pup with the flea spray still on her hands, and they too caught fire. Long story short, the house was a mess, but both the lady and the dog fortunately survived with moderate burns. There was also the lady who tried to sanitize her panties in the microwave, but thankfully I was off that day. Family friend decided to make major renovations on their home with no background in construction or carpentry. They also didn't bring a professional to ensure that their renovations were up to fire code. Lo and behold, an exposed wire sparked a fire in the middle of the night and burned down their entire home. They have 3 kids and are very fortunate they were all able to escape the fire without any injuries. To make matters even worse, they had no house insurance. Extreme libertarians that didn't believe in insurance or debt, so they ended up having to rely on a GoFundMe fundraiser, set up by a relative, to recover financially. Last I heard, they were still living in a hotel, trying to figure out their next plan of action. The story alone reaffirms my belief that some things are better left to the professionals. Even if you're trying to cut costs, it might be best to pay a little extra to have someone with experience do something for you instead. This avoids terrible situations like this. See, there are a lot of things the narrator will slog through and do a terrible job at in order to save money. Things involving high voltage are not on that very long list. The same with flammable gases. Yay, my $50,000 in materials house went up in flames within 5 minutes of me turning the lights on. That would be the title of my newsletter that week. This one happened in my building. In India, generally you have a small praying place in your house, like a little version of a temple, a shrine. You light a lamp every day and pray there. In this particular case, the family decided to keep this thing on a fricking refrigerator. The lamp fell behind the fridge due to wind from the window adjacent to it. The condenser caught fire and literally exploded. The whole floor was then on fire. Luckily, no one was home. It was a really dumb decision to keep a temple on a fricking fridge. This one happened in a certain mall here in Monterrey, Mexico. We have a Freaky Plaza, a little mall where all the geeks, gamers, and otakus go to, and on the second floor someone was smoking while playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And since he didn't want to throw his ashes on the floor and the trash can was far away from him, he decided to make a paper ashtray. Yeah, that didn't work out well, especially when 3 of his friends decided to use it as well. So here in Argentina we have El Cordero a la Cruz. Basically cooking a whole lamb with an open fire. And well, it just so happens that pines are really flammable. And if you make an unprotected fire in a floor covered in pine leaves near a blooming pine, well… Ooh, I have 2! The first is that once my neighbor stole 15 propane tanks and decided to make a DIY blowtorch. By neighbor, I mean he lived below us. We were giving him our basement. He almost lit the house on fire, but then he tripped on something and fell over. The next morning we looked and saw it had burned a little bit, but not much. He was also very drunk that day. And the second was that once we lived in a basement suite, and the people who lived above us were making toast at 2 a.m. And they used a fork to get it out, but the fork hit something, so the toaster caught fire. And my mum tried to wake me up, but I just pulled my blanket over my head and said, "I just want to sleep a little more." And then my mum said the house could burn down, and I was the first one out of my house. My neighbors forgot they had ferrets inside. We grabbed our dog, but they didn't grab their ferrets. The fire department came, but my neighbors could have put out the fire if they unplugged the toaster and put baking soda on it. Settle in, folks. Mr. Homeowner was attempting to deep fry tater tots in a saucepan of oil on a gas stove. The oil frothed up when the frozen tots hit the surface, igniting the whole thing. Mr. Homeowner then proceeded to try and grab the pan by the handle and swing it over the sink. I imagine it was like a Vietnam-era napalm run. Well, he managed to spread the fire across the linoleum floor and in a panic let go of the pan, launching it, the remaining burning oil, and tots into the laundry basket, which was full of freshly dried clothes. In the ensuing panic, Mr. Homeowner thought he could try to get the flaming laundry basket out to the back porch. Well, he only managed to knock the flaming basket off the table, and it tumbled off the table and straight down into the basement. leaving a nice trail of burning oil-soaked towels all the way down. Now, Mr. Homeowner decides to make egress out of the back kitchen door, down the stairs into the backyard. He slightly missed the stairs, hit his bare right foot on one of the railing posts, breaking a couple of toes, and then flew forward off the staircase, managing to impale himself onto a bit of rebar that was protruding from a cement block that they were using as a sort of barrier on the edge of the cement patio. And there he stayed, clad only in boxer shorts. He managed to nick his liver pretty badly, but somehow survived. Did I mention he had burned his legs up pretty badly as well? So, the smells and smoke and the screams of Mr. Homeowner at finding himself struck through with a piece of rusty iron alerted Big Mama, Mr. Homeowner's girlfriend, and their punk teen kids number 1 and 2 upstairs. They realize something's afoot. As far as we can tell, Big Mama went looking for the kids or the dogs, both the dogs had already made it out, over the raging laundry and oil combo fire 1 flight below. She found Mr. Homeowner on the back patio bleeding and turning grey, screaming and trying to get off the piece of metal. The punk teen kids, with the dogs, climbed out of a side bedroom window to the side porch roof. The older punk teen kid, about 16 years old, managed to tumble off. He didn't land well. I think he ended up breaking his arm pretty badly. The dogs and the younger ones got pulled off that roof by the neighbors. Big Mama apparently had a significant cardiac event and fell over. She happened to do so in the junk room, a sort of Collier Brothers-style room filled shoulder-high with stacked boxes of junk. By the time we got there, it was just a charred, soaked mess of black slop about waist deep. We had to dig Mama out of it. That was wretched. All of this attracted the attention of the many foreign laborers who were living in the boarding house next door. They helped the best they could, but also became a very raucous audience. A few of them were bomberos voluntarios back in Guatemala, and having an entire company of mostly non-English speaking volleys show up intent on going to work made things very interesting. 2 of these guys saved Mr. Homeowner's life though. I have never, in my 27 years of doing this, arrived on a scene of such screaming and chaos. Thank you, dear author, for a very well-written and illustrative description of this absolutely chaotic, raging inferno and many resulting medical episodes that resulted from it. And all because my man wanted some tater tots. In the apartment building I stayed in, I had a pretty good fire. A guy threw a lit cigarette in a coffee can full of butts. It was on the far side of the building from us, so my upstairs neighbor and I got to stay. Everyone else had to move. We were dealing with water leaks for almost a year after that. It took them so long to sort out insurance stuff and to make repairs. They finally put on a new roof a few weeks before we moved. Someone tried to make a gummy bear lamp like in iCarly to test if it's really going to burn. And then, his house was on fire. A news article I read, one guy had a fishbowl in his garden shed. The sunlight was focused through the bowl from his kitchen window. Whoomph. My partner's a firefighter. He said the dumbest one was where a man tried to barbecue in his basement. This gentleman's reasoning? I don't want to go outside and risk exposure to the coronavirus. It would be safer to do it here in the basement. Not a firefighter, but I read a story about a woman that started a fire because her firefighter friends were bored. Mine was stupid, but reasonable. There was a spider. By far the dumbest is people smoking while on medical oxygen, like the tanks are coated in labels about how inflammable it is. I was living in a big old single-family home that had been converted into 6 apartments. Because it was a house, it had a shingle roof. The owner hired one of those unlicensed, uninsured type outfits to work on the roof. The kind you find hanging out at Home Depot in the morning looking for jobs. Anyways, long story short, the guy was on the roof, smoking, and somehow caught it on fire. Rather than dialing 911, he ran down 3 flights of fire escape, got the garden hose, ran it back up, and once he got to the top, he realized he'd never turned the hose on. So he ran back down, turned it on, and ran back up. Apparently by that time, it was out of control, so he headed off. One of the neighbors finally called 911, but by then it was on full blaze, destroyed the top 2 floors and most of the first floor. Moral of the story is, just call the professionals. What movie could you turn around and say that the good guy was really a complete butthole in? Tom and Jerry. Tom is just a poor house cat trying to fight off the food-stealing, property-destroying, and teasing little vermin that is Jerry. I love Rent, but seriously, it's about a bunch of teenagers who refuse to pay their rent because their friend and landlord Benny told them a while ago that they could live there rent-free, and now he's asking for them to contribute a bit. So they screw with Benny's business dealings and kill his dog. And then he pays for Mimi to go to rehab? He's definitely the good guy in the movie if anyone is. Benny buys a building, lets his friends live in it for free, comes up with a business plan that would allow them to build a studio that would let them work on their craft. They would still be living rent-free by building condos over the studio and using the rent from the condos to help keep the studio open. The only thing I can see wrong with him is that he's a sucker who keeps allowing people around him to take advantage of his generosity. Mark is a failed screenwriter who villainizes the people he should be grateful to. He ignores his own parents on Christmas because they irritate him, despite them obviously caring a lot for him and missing him. And then he launches an attack on the one person who's trying to help him succeed by supporting him. Roger is a former smack addict who fancies himself a tortured artist, but all he does is sit on his butt in the apartment feeling sorry for himself. Mimi is a 19-year-old smack-addicted exotic dancer who pushes substances on others and has a YOLO philosophy on life. Tom Collins is a bright, intelligent young man who could have had a great future ahead of him if he hadn't vandalized expensive electrical equipment at MIT and got himself fired. So his solution is to mooch off an old acquaintance and drink Stoli while rewiring ATMs. Maureen is a narcissistic, untalented performing arts artist with no morals or sense of loyalty. She's unfaithful, manipulative, and only cares about herself. Angel is a street drummer who appears sweet and kind to all those around him, and yet has no qualms about killing an AITA he had no beef with, or breaking and entering. Joanne falls into the category of sucker. She's an uptight Ivy League graduate who finds herself in over her head when she meets someone who tries to teach her to let her hair down. The music in Rent is brilliant. The storyline is awful. I know some big musical fans who I feel like I can never bring up this new dark knowledge that I now possess to. I guess I'll just carry it with me to my grave. Such is the life. It's yours and my burden to bear, listeners. Peter Pan, as it is clearly said that Peter cut off Hook's hand for no reason. And the Lost Boys? Wendy and her brothers? They're just little kids who were taken from their rooms in the middle of the night to go live with a strange little boy in the middle of nowhere. And in the books, Peter kills the boys once they enter puberty. I think it makes a point to say that he's the only one with a weapon, his knife. The boys who escape him become the pirates and they're devoted to killing Peter Pan so he doesn't kill any more boys. I also think they're trapped on the island. Not sure about that, though. I read the novel when I was 8. Aladdin. He lies the entire time to get Jasmine, and it works. Serendipity. Both the lead male and female were narcissistic buttholes who crapped all over their devoted significant others. The Leprechaun movies. The guy would happily mind his own business if people would just stay the heck off his gold. Squidward minds his own business. He just wants to paint his art and play the clarinet. In fact, you can type Squidward into Google Images, and you basically just get a load of facial expressions of someone being persecuted by his neighbors. He is a bit pretentious, though. The Girl in the Notebook. She cheated on her fiancé and then left him. Animal House is a movie about a college dean simply trying to retain order and safety amongst the Greek system, and the fraternity responds by doing the deed with the dean's wife and mayor's underage daughter. A fraternity member poses as the boyfriend of a deceased sorority member to get a date, and the fraternity eventually destroys the town's parade. Jaws. They're hunting a shark because they're mad that it kills people in the ocean. Heavyweights. A bunch of morbidly obese children imprison the camp's owner for encouraging them to better themselves. Dead Snow. The zombies just wanted their stuff back from those D-bag medical students. Fred from Scooby-Doo. There are a variety of reasons why he's always the biggest villain in the series and movies, but probably the most pertinent is his exploitation of Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy and Scooby are petrified of ghosts, but are always the pair that take the most risks in being human bait in one of Fred or Velma's master plans. Why? Scooby snacks. Fred realizes the two are addicted to Scooby snacks. Heck, Fred himself probably spikes them with white snow or something, so he abuses his monopoly over them to exploit Shaggy and Scooby's addiction. So addicted are the pair that they forgo all of their fears of ghosts just to get a hit. So when Fred says, "Hey guys, why don't you volunteer?" he already knows the answer will be a zombified yes if he promises Scooby snacks or intoxicates the pair on Scooby snacks beforehand. It's similar to promising smack to an addict, provided they do something they're usually scared of. Does the addict really have a choice? No. Fred got Scooby and Shaggy addicted to substances so they'd be more prone to taking risks. The Wizard of Oz. I'm not suggesting Dorothy was evil, but she killed a woman and just accepted that what she'd done was okay because a bunch of little people she'd never met told her the woman was wicked. Seriously, if someone dropped a house on my sister and then proceeded to take her clothing, put the clothing on and then prance off down the road while singing, I'd send winged monkeys after them too. One that's really annoyed me since I've seen it? Happy Feet. The moral of the entire story is, if nature wants to save itself from mankind, it needs to learn how to entertain us better. Seriously, nature isn't entertaining enough for mankind to care, is what Happy Feet's writers seem to say. The Little Mermaid. Seriously, it's a spoiled 16-year-old mermaid who throws a huge fit and becomes obsessed with a complete stranger. Then she makes a deal with the Sea Witch so that she can have legs and run off to marry the complete stranger. Okay, maybe this doesn't necessarily make her a bad person, but what the frick kind of lifestyle is Disney trying to portray as a good way to live? I read an incredibly detailed essay about Michael Bay's Transformers films on the Something Awful forums, if I recall correctly, that said, among other things, Optimus Prime was the series' main villain and Megatron was, if not the hero, then far more traditionally heroic. From what I remember, if you compare Optimus's narration throughout the 3 movies and what is revealed of the war on Cybertron through dialogue, it becomes very clear that Optimus is an unreliable narrator and the Autobots were an outsider group who, having conclusively lost the war, were willing to end their own species. Destroying the Allspark would cut off all possibility of continuing the species after all, as well as revenge killings. All of the Decepticons they and the military hunted down in the second movie who weren't shown as being aggressive. Megatron's character arc has him, after winning the first war, traveling to Earth to retrieve the Allspark so his race can continue, then getting frozen by pure chance, getting discovered, studied, and having his body violated to make our technology, finally escaping with the help of a few loyal friends, only to discover that his old enemies are in league with the creatures who've been dissecting him for the last century. Having one of the creatures, a particularly annoying one, use the object he's been striving for to kill him, and then after getting resurrected, trying to keep his people together while being usurped twice, and all the while being hunted by Optimus and those monstrous, bloodthirsty humans. Not that this wasn't a particularly fun perspective and all, but I'm pretty sure that the guy who wrote the theory put more thought into Michael Bay's Transformers than Michael Bay ever did. And I'm not even a Michael Bay hater, I love me a good pew-pew CGI robots movie. But yeah, there was no way he was thinking on this level. Let's not beat around the bush. In Toy Story 1, Woody is a massive, selfish jerk who's jealous of Buzz and tries to kill him. He doesn't try to kill him, his intention was to knock him behind the desk so that Woody would be taken to Pizza Planet instead. The plan went awry when Buzz dodged. The dentist on Finding Nemo. They make him out to be some kind of kidnapper, but he was just trying to find a nice present for his special needs niece. Mate, you can't just call Australian kids special need kids. Mrs. Doubtfire. Robin Williams is a creepy dad stalking his old family. The Harry Potter series. Dumbledore. He's manipulative and out for the greater good, even if it means setting a child up to face death. Even if Harry didn't die, he thought he would. Not to mention his association with Grindelwald, and the fact that he knew so much information and could have saved a lot of time if he'd just told Harry to begin with. But of course, J.K. Rowling did a brilliant job with the series, and I know that if Dumbledore did say anything, the books and movies would not have been as epic as they were. And I know full well that this isn't a popular opinion. I know that he had to be that way to protect the wizarding world. I just answered the question when I noticed that no one else had mentioned Dumbledore yet. I have read Methods of Rationality. Beauty and the Beast. A man tries to save his love from a crazy beast who almost killed her father and practically enslaved her. I mean, this take would work if Gaston wasn't such an insufferable jerk. Hamlet. He murders his uncle based on the testimony of a fricking ghost. Come on, son. That's the point of his wishy-washiness the whole play. The real evidence, while mostly circumstantial, but enough for Hamlet, was his uncle flinching and leaving during the play within a play. Law-abiding citizen. Starship Troopers. It's all government propaganda to make themselves seem superior. The bugs didn't launch AmITheA, they just became a media scapegoat for the meteor strike on Buenos Aires. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack was a pirate, but they made the English the bad guys for persecuting him. I know that's the point of the story, but it still bothered me as a child. I think the reason Jack is considered heroic is because they never necessarily showed him doing piratey things throughout all 4 movies. We never see him steal from or kill the innocents, as pirates were prone to doing. We just see a mischievous guy who goes on grand adventures and treasure hunts. Also, I would say that the English are evil in the same way Hank from Breaking Bad is evil, which is to say they aren't, they're just lawful. And since the heroes go up against the law, that puts them at odds. Avatar. The humans were industrious and ambitious, and the aliens were lazy. Assuming Jared Diamond is correct, the Na'vi have everything going for them. Superior crops, massive horses, and fricking birds, a global neurological database. They should have become a Type 2 civilization by the time we got to Pandora, but they're too fricking lazy. Frick them, they can die. Avatar, the movie where a crippled human betrays his race for a local girl and escapes all the repercussions for it. Furthermore, not only does he get away with it, he's rewarded for his treason with a new body and acceptance into an alien culture. Proof that if you believe hard enough and betray everything you and everyone around you has worked for, you'll be richly rewarded. Until the humans slam a quintillion-kilogram asteroid traveling at 0.3 C into the planet in order to mine the remnants in space. I don't think the narrator can agree with the assessment that the aliens are the bad guys just for living more or less in harmony with nature or becoming, a super civilization that colonizes everyone else. You can't call them lazy when they live and die swinging through the trees and navigating perilous carnivores, whilst maintaining an egalitarian society that goes toe-to-toe with the industrial military might of Earth. That's a bad take, people. Imagine that you are from Cuba. You grew up shunned and ignored by the USA. In fact, the USA is a distant opponent that you don't know a lot about. You do know that they have a garrison on Cuba, and you know that they keep a military presence here that makes you uneasy. Let's just say that one day, soldiers from that garrison kill your only family members. You're so mad that you join a multinational freedom fighter force that plots to destroy the USA. Just after you join, escaping their military and fleeing your country, you learn that the USA has invaded and effectively destroyed the government of the nation you were headed towards, Panama. You are outraged and vow revenge. Through a series of misadventures, you find your boat taken captive on board an aircraft carrier, the Nimitz, from the USA. You manage to escape, liberating a political prisoner, but your best friend dies in the process. Not only do you hate the USA, you hate the symbol of American oppression, the Nimitz. You flee to Grenada, but learn that the Nimitz is on the way, leading to a plan to topple that country as well. Desperately, you go out in speedboats to attach a bomb to the nuclear reactor. Almost all your fellow freedom fighters die in the attempt, but against all odds, you succeed. The bomb goes off and thousands die. You'll be hailed as a hero by your fellow freedom fighters, but in the USA, you'll be reviled as a villain of the worst sort and a murderer on a massive scale. They'll devote all of their resources to killing you and your peers. From their perspective, you are the bad guy. So what movie am I talking about? Star Wars. Cuba is Tatooine, the USA is the Empire, the freedom fighters are the Rebellion, Panama is Alderaan, Grenada is a moon of Yavin, Nimitz is the Death Star. It's all about perspective. National Treasure. Nicolas Cage was the bad guy, and at worst, Sean Bean was misunderstood. Think back to the very beginning of the movie. Sean Bean and Nick Cage are both treasure hunting together. They've been a good team together. They've been working together well. Heck, Sean Bean has been funding the entire operation. Then they finally find the clue that tells them that the map is on the back of the Declaration of Independence. Sean Bean suggests that they borrow the map. Nicolas Cage suddenly and strangely says no. "I'm not going to let you steal the Declaration of Independence," and essentially implies that he would stop Sean Bean from getting the Declaration. Think about this for a minute. These two are friends. They've been working together for years. And suddenly, when they're so close, Nick Cage goes, "Sorry, I'm not going to let you get the treasure." And then, to top it all off, Nick Cage steals the Declaration of Independence himself. He justifies it by saying that to stop Sean Bean from stealing the Declaration, he, Cage, must steal it first. What? That's like if I was working in a bank robbery group and then decided that to prevent the bank robbery from happening, I should rob the bank first and keep the money for myself. It makes no sense and is a clear betrayal. Why didn't Cage just work with Sean Bean in the first place, and the two could have shared the treasure together like they'd planned? Finally, at the end of the movie, Nick Cage basically frames Sean Bean for the theft of the Declaration. Remember, Nick Cage stole the Declaration. The FBI agent specifically said that someone has to go to jail. Nick was caught and is on film with the Declaration of Independence. How did he not go to jail? Instead, Sean Bean goes, for doing what? He never stole the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, he might have done some other stuff like kidnapping, violence, etc., but those were justified because he had been betrayed by Cage. And there are lots of other little details throughout the movie showing Nick Cage's trickery and deception against Sean Bean. From the very beginning, it's made out like he used Sean Bean and his vast resources just to find the clue in that boat. And even when Sean Bean broke Nick Cage out of police custody, remember, Sean Bean was helping Nick Cage out here, Nick Cage was still pulling little tricks, hiding the truth, and not telling Sean Bean everything he knew, which they had made an agreement to do. Seriously, rewatch this movie, look at it very closely, and tell me how Sean Bean is the bad guy here. The entire movie, Nick Cage is pulling the tricks, hiding the ball, and betraying Sean Bean, who was his friend at the beginning of the movie. And just answer this very simple question. Nicolas Cage stole the Declaration of Independence. So why didn't he go to jail? In short, Sean Bean wasn't the bad guy in National Treasure, and Nick Cage was because he betrayed Sean Bean at the very beginning of the movie and essentially framed him as stealing the Declaration of Independence. Did you forget how the movie begins with betrayal and Sean trying to kill Nick? Or how Nick tries to go to the authorities first to warn them that someone will try to steal the Declaration, but they all ignore him due to his family's history? Or how, at the end, Sean leaves Nick and the crew in a pit, seemingly to starve to death? You're kind of reaching here, my friend. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He skipped school, convinced his girlfriend to skip school, dragged his sick friend out of bed, and made his friend steal his father's incredibly expensive car. Ed Rooney was a hard-working educator. Most faculty in his position would have sighed, rolled their eyes, and shrugged Ferris's chronic absenteeism off. But Dean Rooney went above and beyond the call of duty, actually going out to track Ferris down and get his life back on track. And I know the actor who played Rooney was an awful man, you can all stop mentioning it. And I know that the character made it personal and crossed a bunch of lines, but that doesn't change the fact that A, he was doing his job, and B, Ferris was a self-entitled jerk and breaking the law left and right. Yeah, I think that everyone in the audience was well aware that Bueller isn't meant to be a saint, he's just a little craphead who's looking for a good time and takes us along with him. But I guess me pointing it out doesn't make it contrary to the point of this video. However, it does make me laugh thinking about people coming out of this movie white-fisted with rage about how awful this boy was for playing hooky from school. It always bothered me about how Rose, upon surviving the Titanic, went and got married and lived a happy life. The whole shebang. Once she dies, however, is when crap hits the fan. Does she go see her loving husband who spent his life with her? No, she goes with a dude she had a little fling on a boat with. Crap pisses me right off. Justin Bieber, Never Say Never. 500 Days of Summer. Tom. I'm not sure that Summer could be the good guy or Tom could be the bad guy, just that they're guys. I think that's what the movie does so well. It paints them off as complex people living in shades of grey. Tom does idealize her, but I don't think that makes him bad. I think everyone has idealized a significant other or a crush at some point, and Summer told him that she wasn't looking for something serious, so I can't blame her for that. And yet, they were a couple and she refused to acknowledge that fact. Bottom line is that both are exceedingly well-written characters. The all-time D-bag good guy in a movie was Santa Claus in the classic stop-motion Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. What a narcissistic, self-serving, porcine SOB. He has zero empathy for anyone else's problems and has the gall to tell Rudolph's dad that his son had better outgrow the red nose if he wants to be on the sleigh team someday. It's pretty ironic that a human manatee in a red suit is ostracizing someone else based off their appearance. By the way, I'm a big boy, so I've got a bit of slack when it comes to the fat jokes. Rudolph's dad is no hero either. Frickin' suck-up. His reindeer lips are locked firmly around old Kris Kringle's candy cane. He's totally on board in shaming his son for daring to look different. And let's not forget how he treated the elves after they spent so much time and energy groveling before him, celebrating his bowl full of jelly butt by singing his praises. It was very clear that Santa gave exactly zero fricks about the elves and their hosannas. I guess every slave owner has the same opinion. It's too bad they made the man in red look like such a squirming bag of Johnsons. Really casts a pall on my Christmas memories, considering how much I cherished that show when I grew up. Didn't really figure out how messed up it was until I hadn't seen it in years and watched it as an adult. In short, Santa is a jiggling bag of crap who treats Rudolph and the elves like they were toenail dirt. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.